Howdy, y'all. Can everybody see the entire screen? Okay, this podium, is this in the way of anybody being able to see the whole screen? Because there might be stuff at the bottom. We can't move it. And please do keep those lights down. That'd be great. I was like looking at the previous slides. I was like, oh no, these are going to be washed out. Nobody's going to be able to see it. All right, thank you for the intros. Man, I'm glad I didn't lose it crying. Or maybe I will. All right, I don't know how your last 4 years went, but I've heard from a few of you how it went in your careers, but man, has it been an exhausting 4 years. There's only really been a few days in 4 years that I can actually say were a blast to me. Like maybe 5. Where it was genuinely just a great day, wished it wouldn't end. And I hated that. Because every day for me was fun, exciting. Until a hospital decided to take the life of someone I loved. And then it was a game on. Like relentless and exhausting. So, most of you may know the pretext to why it is I started speaking out, but there's really only a few days where I actually enjoyed myself over the last 4 years. I can enjoy myself on a stage. I can enjoy myself in an interview. But it's not like just experiencing life and enjoying breathing, the air, hiking in the mountains, hanging out with your kids, being with your wife. That's not the enjoyment. There's only been a few times where that has happened, though. One of those was with, actually there's been multiple of these with Dr. Judy Mikovits in my home. There have been times during COVID, I've had multiple events in my home where I had 50, 70, 95 people that all of you would know as heroes in the COVID-19 movement. It was an odd group. It's like taking everybody you've seen on screen, putting them in a house, and man, did we have a blast for hours and hours and hours. In fact, the first time we did this, I invited 75, my wife and I. When we kicked everybody out at like 1 in the morning, there was 96 people there, and I didn't even know half of them. Like, where did you all come from? They just heard there was a party at the Ardis in Dallas, Texas. It was really funny. There was even people I didn't even know that were asleep on the couches, and we had to like wake them up and get them out. We didn't even know where they came from. Seriously, they just said they heard a party was going on in Dallas at Dr. Ardis' house. It was really odd. So 2 of those times were incredible. There was a time in Puerto Rico that John was a part of. In fact, I've never had more fun in a van down by the river. And then with this guy, me, Jane, and Dr. Seema Nanda out of Houston, this optometrist, man, it was hilarious. In fact, it was, if you remember in high school, there's like the cool table at lunch, right, where all the popular kids are. We had the cool van, and we kicked every other doctors out. They had to be in the other vans. They're not invited to ride with us all over Puerto Rico. This island is ours. And man, did we laugh all day long. So thanks for those moments, John. It was actually quite memorable. All right, so as I go through this presentation, I'm going to actually put up a whole lot of slides. I want you to know this presentation has like 380 slides I'm about to give you. So I hope you brought your pens. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't write anything down unless there's something that resonates and you're like, that applies to my life, because the very next slide has a QR code. If you'll just take your phone and scan it, it will actually take you to the page on my website that is free that has this entire PowerPoint on it. So please don't get lost trying to figure out if you can keep track with what I'm saying. God gave me a brain that just soaks up information and it will just spit it all out, and I don't know why it remembers all the numbers, all the data, all the stuff, but I used to say in middle school and high school to all my friends, I'm the coolest nerd you'll ever meet. Because at recess, in elementary school, middle school, at recess, when they would blow the bell or release the bell, I didn't want to go outside. Not with the kids. I wanted to be in the library with an encyclopedia. There wasn't the internet back then. I might look really young, but there was no internet. So I had Encyclopedia Britannica and World Book and those things to play with. And I just, for some reason, loved learning everything about nature. To me, that was cool. Animals were awesome. I wanted to be a marine biologist, while other kids had Legos or Lincoln Logs that they were playing with. I literally was buying every documentary by Jacques Cousteau. And all the walls in my rooms were covered in National Geographic maps and Jacques Cousteau images. That's all it was. And I actually thought I'd be a marine biologist until I read in 8th grade, during recess, I was reading the Encyclopedia Britannica. I had one reason I went to the library. I wanted to know, what does a marine biologist make a year? Like, what's my future going to look like? Because I want to be that guy. I want to be Jacques Cousteau #2. And then I read that a PhD marine biologist makes $31,000 annually. And I remember looking at that number going, I am not swimming with dolphins and porpoises and being broke the rest of my life and asking the government for money to fund my research. That's weird. No wonder why that guy Jacques Cousteau produces film, sells posters. He saw what Farrah Fawcett made off that poster and was like, take pictures of me. And it worked. That's how he made money. Marine biologists don't make money. So I decided I was going to go off and have some other career then at that point, and I would make enough money to go scuba dive if I wanted to and pretend to be Jacques Cousteau if I wanted to. Okay? That's just who I am. That's how I was wired. In church, I remember at 8 years old asking the bishop of my church at 8 years old, I was begging him to let me do a presentation to the congregation. Now, my parents didn't know I was asking this guy this, but every time he'd come off the stand, I would just run up to him, hey, can I give a talk? Can I give a talk? Can I give a talk? And he would look down at me and go, cute kid, cute. No, kids aren't allowed to talk at the pulpit. This is not a joke. I was so emphatic, I asked him every single Sunday for 6 months. And when I'd go home devastated, I would just be sad for an hour, and my parents would wonder what was wrong, and I'd go, the bishop said no again. I can't talk. He won't let me talk. I just want to talk. Well, what would you talk about? It doesn't matter. I just want to talk. I just wanted to be one of the people up there talking. 6 months later, my parents are like, goes to the bishop privately, would you please just tell him he can talk? Maybe like let him talk for 5 minutes, and maybe he'll be embarrassed, maybe he'll stumble, and then he won't ever do it again. It'll be over. Give him one shot. He finally comes to me and says, yeah, I'll let you talk. And I was like, whoa, really? There's like 500 people in the congregation. I was so excited. I've never seen a kid do this. I want to do it. So he's like, great, just bring your talk with you. Make sure you have about 5 minutes worth of material. Okay, great. I go up to the pulpit on this Sunday, and I don't have anything with me. So I'm walking up there, and he thinks I should have a printout or had it somewhere, but I didn't have anything. I just walked up there in my little shirt and tie. And as I go up to the pulpit, I go to stand up on this step to get up on the pulpit that they brought over for me. And the bishop looks at me, and he's like, the leader of the church is like, where's your notes? Where's your speech, your talk? And I pulled out of my pocket a 3x5 card that had 5 words on it, like bullet points. And he goes, that's all you have? And I said, yes. And I gave this 5-minute talk just off of these 5 points. Not a joke. I was invited to speak every 6 months on some topic I wanted to talk about. It was quite funny. I am wired to present. It is what God wired me to do. It just happened to be the other part of that wiring was you're going to present on really scientific stuff no one else wants to read. And when I say no one, I mean every MD almost you're going to meet. They don't want to read it either. They read all the stuff they wanted to in med school and then put those books on the shelf and were like, I don't ever have to read again. I have all knowledge related to health. And just so you know, I've spent 25 years correcting all of them. And this is not a joke. They have been so lied to, it's ridiculous, and they just don't know it. All of us are products of our training and our education. So whatever they've been told, they're told this is the truth. Now go tell everybody else. So they're not at fault. They just have pathetic, ridiculous training on how the human body works. In fact, they're taught the human body created this body that's so stupid it has no idea how to heal itself. You have to drug it or cut out that organ. In fact, God screwed up on day 6. He is not all-knowing and all-powerful like you believe he is and profess he is, Protestant America. You all act like he screwed up on day 6. Every single one of you. Every single one of you who watched a baby come out of the womb and looked at that perfect miracle that you could never recreate on your own. You literally spend like 2 minutes with this perfect creation of God, and then some a-hole in a white coat is going to walk up to you and say, I'm really sorry, but God forgot an immune system. We have to inject it with our man-made created hepatitis B vaccine and vitamin K shot. And you go just like this. You're right. He did screw up. He didn't screw up, people. And you're about to learn there's way more lies than you've even rationalized yet. So let me just give you one before I even get started. Now, just so you know, I just said I'm going to be talking. Please don't worry about all the notes here. It's all going to be here. So if I don't get through the whole thing and I have to stop early because it's at 2 hours and there's still slides up there, where are you going to get it? At my website. The whole thing's there. All right, so there's 2 topics I'm going to teach you about today. This first presentation is about the other N-word. I've realized growing up in Georgia and South Carolina, John, that there's an N-word that makes some people upset, except for rappers. Everybody's uncomfortable about this one word, except when rappers start screaming it to music. And then it's totally fine. But it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Well, I have found out in the last 2 years there's another N-word that I say that makes every MD squirm, and the majority of humans on earth go, what in the world's wrong with this guy? I don't want to hear it. That's taboo. And that's nicotine. So I call this the other N-word, because they're 2 words that are very taboo politically. All right, so we're going to get to that. And then the second presentation I'm going to do, no one has ever seen. In fact, no one's even seen this whole presentation, but no one has seen at all the next one. The next one is the natural cures God put on this earth that are already proven by science to be cures for the bird flu forevermore. You've already heard this racket once 20 years ago, and I used to tell people, this is ridiculous. Let that crap go. I'm going to show you what God gave you on this earth before he put you on it. That was the cure for this crap too. So that when it's repeated 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you do not have to worry about what Pfizer's going to create for you, what Moderna's going to offer for you, what Johnson & Johnson's going to make for you, what Bill Gates is going to invest in. You don't have to worry about that crap. Okay? None of those companies can make anything like what God did, unless you believe he's fallible and not good enough as man. Okay, I have more faith in God and God's creations than I do in science. Okay, that's just it. All right, so let me just give you a pretext to a lie you've all been told, even you medical doctors, if you're in here, all health professionals, a lie you've been told, and an example in which you would realize, oh my God, I have been lied to. I mean, it would all make sense to you once I say it. All right. Has anybody in here ever had a heart attack? Raise your hands. Okay, we've had some in here. All right. If someone in this room had a heart attack right now, the very next step should be somebody calls 911. Agreed? All right. We should call 911. If someone has a heart attack in here and somebody is CPR certified, they're going to do CPR on this person, don't you think? Okay, good. As soon as the EMTs show up, whether we resuscitated the person or not, the EMTs are going to come in. They're going to try to stabilize the heart issue. So if we've got CPR going on, they've got these electronic devices. They're going to jumpstart that heart. And then there's going to be something they're going to do right after that that should be contrary to everything you've been told your whole life. How many of you have heard that consuming salt every day at high levels is a risk factor for high blood pressure and heart attacks? Good. The moment they're going to resuscitate you, the EMTs are going to run in here, put you on a stretcher, they're going to put you in the ambulance, and the very first thing you're going to give you, regardless if they've started that heart or not, the first thing they're going to do to you before a doctor ever evaluates you is they're going to hang up a bag and inject it inside your veins. And what is that bag of fluid called? Saline. Saline. What's another word for saline? Salt water. Okay, hold up. You know, maybe it's not very much salt. All right. How many of you know what the FDA's recommended daily allowance every day of your life to stay healthy? What is that recommended daily allowance? The FDA tells you you should not eat more of this amount of salt every single day. What's the number? 2,000 milligrams. The American Heart Association says the FDA is dumb and doesn't know what they're talking about. It should be half of that every day, 1,000 milligrams. Does anybody in this room know how much salt's in a bag of salt water that's hanging in every ambulance and hospital room in America? 9,000 milligrams of salt. All right, so my mother-in-law got a flu shot a few months ago against us wanting her to at 91 years old. Within 20 minutes, collapses, busted her head open, passes out. It's taken to the emergency room. We get there as she does. Her blood pressure's at 280 over 180. Does anybody know how high that is? It's like double what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 120 over 80 normally. This is at 280 over 180. They call this stroke level. So they bring her into the hospital. This is at midnight, and there are people making rounds. The MDs cannot get down to this room for an hour. So they're just instructing the nurses station what to do. This is only a few months ago, people. I'm standing in the room. The nurse comes in the room and hooks up a saline bag, as she says, instructed by the MD before they get down here. And she's been instructed, she tells us, to put this entire bag of salt water into her veins and release the pressure valve, and they call it a push. You're going to push it all in immediately. So they inject her with 9,000 milligrams of salt before the MD ever checks on her or has ever even been in the room. 20 minutes later, she comes in again, and I'm just standing there. I don't say anything the first time. I'm just watching. The same nurse comes in 20 minutes later. The bag is empty 20 or 30 minutes later. But she's coming in with another bag. She has been told by the MD to do it again. He hasn't even come down yet. So they do it again without the check valve, another push. So as the nurse comes walking out, you have to imagine the irony of this for me. So I'm watching this. She comes walking towards the door, and I said, "Hey, I've got a question for you. How long have you been a nurse?" She's in her 20s, early 20s. She's like, "Just a few years." And I said, "Do you find it ironic that in nursing school you were taught that salt raises your blood pressure and increases your risk for heart attacks? Do you find it ironic that they tell you to inject this woman with 18,000 milligrams of salt in less than an hour before the MD comes in a patient who has stroke level blood pressure?" And you know what she said to me? "Actually, it's disgusted me for the first 6 months I was working in this hospital. But they don't call it salt water when you're in the hospital, nor do they call it saline. All you hear them say is, make sure the patient gets fluids." And it kind of sweeps away the significance of what it really is. Every patient needs fluids. Well, what is the fluids? Salt, chloride, water. So when they say everybody needs fluids, they are saying everybody needs salt water. Follow me. Isn't that amazing? Do you know if you actually close your eyes right now and thought about every hospital room in the world, no matter why the person was there, they could have been shot, they could be going under surgery for a lobotomy, they could have a brain tumor, they can have high blood pressure, they could have a, decapitated arm in a car wreck. It doesn't matter. Close your eyes. It doesn't matter. You guys know what a rubbernecker is, or is that a southern term? You ever drive down the highway and you're like, why is people looking over there and slowing down on my side? Doesn't matter, the wreck's over there. Stop looking over there. You ever walk down a hospital knowing that there's a room at the end your loved one's in, but there's open doors along the way? Who naturally doesn't want to look in every room to see who's in there, right? Everybody's looking in there. What's in there? What's in there? The truth is, right now, if you closed your eyes and visualized every hospital room in the world, millions of them right now with millions of people in them, they only have one thing all in common. Salt water is being pumped inside their body at 9,000 milligrams a bag every single day. They have lied to you as an entire society, and they went at great lengths to lie to you so that you would stop eating salt. And they know you physically need salt because you're a mammal. Anybody ever raise a farm animal? What do you put out in the pasture for all the mammals? Yeah, you starting to get it? Do you know every mammal out there licking that salt lick has every organ you do? Do you know every mammal actually has exactly every chromosome and gene you do? How many of you know that your kidneys require salt and potassium to even urinate? They're called sodium-potassium pumps. So if they can lie to you and tell you to not eat salt every day, and it's a high risk factor for high blood pressure and strokes and heart attacks, and you lower your salt intake, your blood pressure is going to go up. Your kidneys are going to not function to release water, and you're going to back up water into your body. When you start backing up water into your body, increase water in your body. Is that going to add pressure to your arteries and blood vessels or lower it? Add. So now you're going to get increased blood pressure. Then your medical doctor is going to tell you, you inherited this from your parents. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's genetic and you have to go on high blood pressure medications for the rest of your life. For example, Lasix, hydrochlorothiazide. These are diuretics that make you pee. And just so you know, rattle those little pills around in an orange box that your pharmacy gave you that your medical doctor wrote you the prescription for. How many of you knew those are patented forms of salt? Don't eat salt, but buy our salt. Don't eat salt, but buy our salt. Sorry about that. And then remember, if we really don't need salt, why do they pump salt into everybody who is sick for any reason? They know they've created an entire society that's deficient in salt. And anytime you get sick, anytime you have a heat stroke, anytime you have any issue, the moment we flood their veins with salt that they require, it's on the periodic table of elements that you all learned in biology are the basic elements that make up you. The moment they told you to deprive that from you, they know they're going to look like amazing miracle workers within 5 minutes of giving you the one thing they've told you to avoid every day of your life. And you're going to lay there before the MD even comes in, you're going to go like this, oh my God, I'm so glad I came here, I already feel better. Yes, you do. They just pumped you full of the stuff they're telling you not to eat. Now, here, just for reference here, just so you realize, this is what you're dealing with. Did you know that the FDA signs a contract every 2 years with the companies that import to America fluid bags for hospitals and ambulances? And that every hospital in America cannot pay any higher than the amount the FDA tells those companies they're going to buy each salt bag for. In 2020, that amount was $2.25 a bag of salt water. If you want to know why they're lying to you, do you know what the average hospital charged insurance for a child's one bag of salt water is? They claim to get paid from that child's insurance for every single bag of salt water they paid $2.25 for. Can anybody tell me what the average charge to insurance for a child's bag of salt water is in America? $383. Now it gets better. Do you know what they charge every adult? Like my mother-in-law just a few months ago, in 1 hour, they charged 2 bags of salt water in 1 hour to Medicare. Do you know what they charged? $800. Why in the world would they tell you salt's bad for you? You should know now. You're welcome. Oh, did you see Tel Aviv University in Israel did a study in 2016, largest ever on salt ever, 500,000 patients in 49 countries, the largest study ever on blood pressure and salt. They surveyed for 10 years. They wanted to know, what is the average consumption of salt in all these 500,000 people around the world in 49 countries, and what is the best blood pressure markers, heart readings, and heart health? into what amounts of salt every day. At the end of the 10 years, they published their findings that the people that ate the most salt, between 6,000 milligrams a day to 9,000 milligrams, had the greatest blood pressure and lowest risk factors for any heart condition whatsoever. The Lancet publishes the findings in their medical journal. Within 1 month, the American Heart Association sued that British medical journal for posting that study and said, you will never get funded again by the American Heart Association if you don't retract that study. What I loved about this was the Lancet went like this. Okay, American Heart Association, we won't tell the world that it wasn't retracted. We're going to put a paragraph at the top of the study that says the American Heart Association threatened us that if we don't take this down, we had to retract the study. Then my question for you would be this: why would the American Heart Association see this as a problem? The American Heart Association supposedly in 1929, when it was founded, 1920s, their mission statement is to help cure and rid the world of heart disease and help you understand through research and fund research what are the causes for underlying heart disease. Oh my God, I thought this is what they were getting funded for the last 100 years. Why would they be upset about this? Wouldn't you be excited to know here's information we did not know? Why would the American Heart Association be pissed about that paper? Where do they get their money? The pharmaceutical company is giving them money to promote the products they're developing for heart disease. This is not hard, people. All right. This is just an example of just one of the billion lies, unfortunately, that surround health. And for the last 20-something years, I've been fascinated with understanding how God designed the body, how is it created, and then can I explain to people what are the truths about the body use or how the body works, and then apply food and nutrients and homeopathics and modalities that are all natural to improve it. All right, so let's get into this, because this is something I never knew. I never wanted to know 2 years ago. I didn't want to know this crap. All right. In fact, I really find it ironic to be standing anywhere doing presentations, because at the end of 4 months of hiring a publicist to sit at my kitchen table and tell the whole world that Dr. Anthony Fauci was lying about remdesivir and the COVID-19 protocols, I actually fired the publicist and I was done. I thought I was done talking. I just needed my conscience clear that I hope this falls on someone's ears and anybody's life is preserved, because if I can help save one life when I couldn't save her dad's life, it was going to be worth it. And that was it. But it's turned into a lot more. So it's been very humbling to watch people react to your messaging and then be able to show audiences where you're getting this information from and then applying it in their lives and watching them recover. It's incredible. All right, so this is one of those scenarios I just didn't know, but I just love research and data. I just love it. And the more I'm learning, the more excited my life becomes. All right, so this is the slide. You scan that. It'll ask for your email to get access to this thing. You can actually unsubscribe later. I don't care. There are multiple presentations on this webpage of different topics. In fact, I was just in Los Angeles 2 months ago at the Conscious Life Expo. I was asked to do a presentation, and on the front row was a woman and a man. They're the only ones in the room as I walk into the back before they opened it up for the ticket holders. And this woman had been waiting there, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, comes running up to me crying because I'm walking in the room, and she gets to meet me. I did not know this person, but they had flown down from Alaska just for my presentation and were going back to the airport to leave after my presentation, which was only an hour. What she said to me was, I watched a presentation you did last summer on how to beat Parkinson's. And yes, it's on my website at the same page. She goes, and when you got to the part about nicotine, I decided to put nicotine patches on my husband, who's been struggling horribly with declining Parkinson's symptoms and issues and diagnosis for 6 or 7 years. Her whole life has been a mess. They put nicotine patches on him, and in 2 weeks, out of her mouth, my husband is cured of all Parkinson's. That was not what I expected before I went up on stage, but that is an incredible moment for me, right? It's like, your information isn't wasted. It's actually been of value to somebody. And God, do I hope anything I say today is of value to you. If I don't get through all of this, that's okay. Remember, you get the whole thing. But I hope this sets the stage for what you're about to learn. You just got to open your mind to, have you been lied to ever in your whole life? Okay? I mean, if I asked y'all to sit quietly, I did this with my dad one time, and he actually lied to me and said, this has never happened to me. And I said, oh my God, you're lying to me right now. Okay. Everybody in here can think of a time, all of you can, if you just sat for a moment. Have you ever been told a lie, believed the lie, later found yourself defending that lie to somebody else, only to find out later you were wrong? Yes? Can y'all think of these? In fact, if there's anybody that says no, I'll go like this. Oh, really? Where'd you grow up? And they'll tell me where they grew up, and I'll go, okay, so you never believed ever that Santa Claus was real. And you never found yourself with a kid your age. At some point, you went, hey, man, you know what your mom and dad read. That never happened to you. And you weren't stuck in a quandary. Like, my parents would never lie to me. That's you defending the lie to somebody else. See how simple I can make this for you. All right. I'm Dr. Ardis, and you've been lied to. Ready? All right, here we go. I hope y'all can follow along. I hope this is entertaining. I will try to stay on the slides. I was actually flown, me and Peter McCullough, to Kansas City a couple years ago. I'm on the flight. I usually build my presentations on the flight, but between Dallas and Kansas, it's like 45 minutes. I am to speak the next day, and my wife, I usually sit down on the plane because I never know where I'm going, and I'll go, honey, where are we going? What's my topic and how long? She knows all that stuff. And she goes, oh, crap, I forgot to tell you, honey. You're talking tomorrow for 6 hours straight. And I was like, wait, really? I guess I can close that laptop. There ain't no way I'm doing that in 45 minutes. I was so excited. My very next comment was, honey, there ain't no way Peter's talking for 6 straight hours. I just knew he couldn't do it. That's a lot to ask somebody. Sure enough, he had to split up between 2 days. I did it in 6 hours straight, got on a flight right afterwards, I flew to California, and did another presentation a few hours later. All right, so I can go for a long time. I want to stay on point so I can get through as much of this as I can. On the opposite side of whatever break there is between this and the next part, I will go back into the end of this stuff, or I can skip it. Y'all can go download this, but the stuff at the end of this one presentation is to me the most exciting, but I have to set this stage for you because you're about to realize how it is they lie to you and why it is you believe it so easily. Like in everything. It's crazy. All right. Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. All right, this is April 1994. Our United States Congress decides to bring in the 7 CEOs of every largest tobacco companies in America and ask them to do one thing and one thing only. We're going to ask you one question. And here's the question. Under threat of perjury from the senators, they were asked to raise their hands and swear under oath that nicotine is either addictive or not addictive. And in unison, all of them said it is not addictive. By the way, none of them were found guilty of perjury. But 4 months later, the FDA's like, I don't care what they said. FDA panel says nicotine is addictive. And you'll see the dates, you'll see highlighted in borders, you'll see red things. It's usually to draw your attention to where I want you to look so I can go through the slides faster. Remember, you can read this and study it as much as you want later. Print it out, go to Kinko's, FD, FedEx, whatever it is. Have it printed into a binder for you if you'd like. This is the warning ever since August 1994 when the FDA decided to lie to you. Warning. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Anybody know this guy? Yeah. This guy? It's the same guy. This guy? It's that guy hanging out with that guy. I don't know who that guy is, but I know who that guy is. And here he is again, and he's hanging out with that guy again. That guy. His name is Joseph Goebbels. Anybody know what they reference this guy as in significance when it comes to the Nazi regime and war? What did they call him? The father of propaganda. Okay? All right, so this is this guy. He's got this incredible quote, and I'm going to read it to you. because 100% of the time, this is how the media is controlling you. And the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry. All right, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state the government can shield the people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state, the government, to use all, significant here, all of its powers to repress dissent. For the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state / government / AMA / AHA / FDA / HHS / CDC / NIH. Got it? Now, with the topic I'm going to be sharing with you today, I am actually going to break down every sentence of this quote and show you how it has worked for the last 30 years with this one topic. So we're going to start with the first part of his famous quote. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. All right, so tell a big enough lie, keep repeating it, people will believe it. Here's the lie, and it's a big one. All right, so they have to keep repeating it. So I'm going to show you ways in which they keep repeating it. Oh, billboards. Nicotine is addictive. You've seen it on jewel products and tobacco products. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Next, another jewel product or another vaping product. This product contains tobacco-free nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Here's some peppermint suckets, some Zen products you can suck with nicotine in them. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Let's keep repeating the lie. Pear liquid vape product. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Here's something that looks like a popsicle. But over here, Truth Canada or Health Canada wants people to know nicotine is highly addictive. Health Canada. Okay, great. Even Superman in comic books wants you to know Nick-O-tine. Never say yes to a cigarette. All right, this is 1994. I want to focus on this key word, repeat. Okay, so in 1994, the Congress of the United States brought in the 7 heads of all tobacco giants in America and said, swear under oath that nicotine is addictive or not. All of them in unison said, what? Nicotine is what? Not addictive. What did the FDA hear? Yeah, I think they may have hearing problems. Maybe they heard all 7 of them say it is addictive and didn't hear the word not. I don't know. All right, so the FDA decides it is addictive. They notify the British Medical Journal in Britain, 1994. Nicotine is addictive, says advisory panel in the US. Who are they talking about? The FDA. Okay? So now they're going to start up here, top right-hand corner. You're going to notice the date. I'm going to show you every year an example of this lie getting repeated every single year since 1994 till now. Okay? So we're going to do this quickly. This is 1995. Next year. This is in APA PsychNet. You're going to see the title is The Scientific Case That Nicotine is Addictive. Evidence of nicotine's addictiveness resides in the tendency, this is how they defined that nicotine is addictive. It's addictive because we know it is, because it's tendency of the smoking habit. 80% of people who initially quit smoking relapse by the end of a year. Now I want to ask you something. If you were addicted to Twinkies but you didn't eat it for a year, and you ate another one a year later, would I look at you and go, oh my God, Twinkies are obviously addictive. Every 12 months she has one. Listen, this is the scientific evidence. Evidence of nicotine's addictiveness resides in the tendency of the smoking habit. 80% of people will do it again a year later. Okay, do they say that about heroin and cocaine? Man, you snort cocaine once, 12 months, man, you're going to do it again, I swear. You're going to be craving it for 12 months, you watch. No, addictive habits are like daily. All right, New Scientist, 1996, tobacco giant knew nicotine was addictive. Journal of Pediatrics, check this out, nicotine addiction, a pediatric disease. Wow. I'd like to, any of y'all in here give your kids nicotine when they're little? I mean, I don't know where you were getting it, but I had no idea it was such a big pediatric problem. But I need you to start understanding why would this be in a pediatric journal? They need pediatricians seeing it too and warning parents and warning kids. The lie needs to be repeated over and over and over and over. You're going to learn why here in a minute.
And who's the first author?
Not Judy Mikovits.
No? But what if
First author Judy Mikovits is asking is David A. Kessler, MD, and I do not know that human. Who is that?
FDA, he went on to lead and fabricate all this fraud.
Did you hear that? Oh, say it again, Judy. Say it again, Judy.
David Kessler got paid by ending up the FDA director in the last decade on perpetrating all this fraud.
Wow.
Revolving door.
I just have to tell you something. Almost every presentation I do, Judy will go, and who's that author? And I'm like, I don't know. And she personally knows these people. It's pretty funny. I'm like, great, go ahead, tell me. It is incredible who this woman has known, the people she's known and been involved with. To me, it's phenomenal and humbling to me personally. All right. Nature Medicine, 1998, nicotine addiction and the lure of reward. National Institutes of Health, tobacco use as drug addiction, the scientific foundation. And what do they say? Nicotine is an addictive drug. All right, so we're just going to keep repeating this. ABC News is going to get in on the action in the year 2000. Study, nicotine addiction can be immediate. Immediate. All right, Pharmacology, Biochemistry and Behavior, 2001, Cellular Mechanisms of Nicotine Addiction. Journal of Dental Education, Managing Nicotine Addiction, because dentists now need to be talking to all their patients about nicotine. Science News, Early Nicotine Use May Lead to Lasting Addiction, study says, 2003. This is CBS News, 2004, Nicotine Addiction, Molecule-eyed. This is Yale News, 2005, Research Explores Nicotine Addiction. 2006, University of California, San Francisco writes this article, smokers invited to test vaccine against nicotine addiction. Don't worry, there's a vaccine for that too. Any smokers in here get this vaccine? No? Anybody? Have you seen anybody, do you know anybody that's been told to get a vaccine for nicotine addiction? When I found all this stuff, I've never even heard this. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, I thought you would enjoy that. New York Times, nicotine addiction is quick in use, 2007. Check this out. I love this. A young cigarette smoker can begin to feel the powerful desires for nicotine within 2 days of first inhaling, a new study has found. The American Journal of Psychiatry. Well, we're not going to elaborate on our title, Nicotine Addiction. Let's just keep repeating it. I mean, seriously, my wife, when I start asking her to use a nicotine agent for 3 months, you know what she said every day? I don't want to be addicted to nicotine. It's in you. You can't help it. All right, NBC News, jury. Check this out in 2009. I didn't know this. Jury. The jury is out. Nicotine addiction causes smokers' death. Okay, I had no idea juries were declaring this. Is pretty awesome. All right, 2010 in Journal of Social Issues, nicotine addiction implications for public health safety. National Public Radio, 2011, Addiction Incorporated. Big tobacco keeping us hooked. Eureka Alert, 2012. Now it's out. New vaccine for nicotine addiction. Nature magazine in 2013, nicotine exposure gives baby rats addictive personalities. Does anybody know what that looks like? I mean, I guess they start biting their fingernails and stuff. You know? I don't really know. Results suggest explanation for why people get exposed to nicotine in the womb are more likely to become smokers. Poor babies. Virginia Tech News. Vaccination for nicotine addiction, 2014. Man, they can't get off of this. All right. Business Insider, 2015. The way nicotine interacts with our brains to get us hooked is terrifying. AAP News, December 2016. Perfect storm can spur nicotine addiction in youth. The Washington Post, 2017. FDA aims to lower nicotine in cigarettes to get smokers to quit. The FDA in 2018 decides to publish this document to tell everybody that produces a product with nicotine from tobacco, you have to include these warning labels. They've updated it. Here we go. What did they say? 2018, this is the example, right off the FDA's website, under the category of cigarette tobacco, it must display the warning on the two principal display panels, and that warning is this. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Now, for roll your own tobacco, it must also display this warning, the same one. What about cigars? Oh, it better include it too. Warning, this product contains a nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. 2019, growing number of North Carolina teens at risk of addiction to nicotine, study finds. And then you got Penn State Health in 2020, light smokers may not escape nicotine addiction. Harvard publishes this paper in 2021. Nicotine addiction is explained and how medications can help you. And there's not just a vaccine for that. We got a prescription just for you. The Boston University School of Public Health, we worry about kids developing lifelong addiction to nicotine. That's 2022. I just wanted to show the date down here. 2023, The Guardian, children so addicted to nicotine they sleep with vapes under their pillow. Australian hearing told. After repeating the world for almost 20 years, it's actually 30 years, I should have corrected it. After repeating to the world for almost 20 years, nicotine is addictive, did the FDA change its view in 2022? All right, this is the FDA 2022, and look at the title. Nicotine is why tobacco products are addictive. Okay, so what makes tobacco products addictive? Nicotine. Is there any question in your mind? What's doing it? I think the FDA is pretty clear. It ain't nothing else but nicotine. Oh, and by the way, California, ain't is a word in the South. That means not, I think. John can help me define that. I don't know. Ain't. Okay. So I ask you, is nicotine addictive? And remember what Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Ask me if this is ironic. I don't find that ironic, but I found it really coincidental in producing this. All right, so in 2002, this is released from Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist University. News release, is nicotine addictive? Israeli scientist challenges all the findings. And I want to read this to you. Since the 1988 report of the Surgeon General, the statements that nicotine is as addictive as heroin and cocaine, that cigarettes are efficient nicotine devices delivering hits to the brain within seconds, have become truisms, like the statement that water is wet. These statements have largely gone unchallenged. The scientist's last name is Frank. Frank argues, I quote, a critical evaluation of the evidence that the Surgeon General mustered for his conclusions and the evidence that has been accumulating since shows that the evidence is extremely weak and certainly not compelling. In fact, many better controlled studies showed that nicotine is aversive both to animals and humans, and nicotine limits cigarette smoking rather than maintains it. And then this comes out in 2015. Nicotine alone does not lead to addiction. You know what's amazing about that? The FDA just said in 2022, nicotine is the addictive substance that causes cigarette smoking to be addictive. I just showed you. So who said this? I wanted to know. Every label I've seen says it's addictive, so who's saying that? It says it here, nicotine's addictive. It says it here, it's addictive. So who's claiming this in 2015? This university. Now, this might be a small school for some of y'all. You might not know it. It's a small junior college in Boston. It's called Harvard. This actual university publishes a study, and if you would like to find out if what I'm about to tell you is true, email Dr. Hillel R. Alpert at halpert@hsph.harvard.edu and ask him, did Dr. Ardis do a good review of your paper in 2015? I'm about to show you. A study of pyrazines, which is a man-made chemical in cigarettes, and how additives might be used to enhance tobacco addiction. Nicotine is known as the drug that's responsible for the addictive behavior of tobacco users, but it has poor reinforcing effects when administered alone. So when they take nicotine and give it to animals or give it to humans, these people don't become addicted to it at all. What they're going to highlight in here is this final conclusion, but I'm not done with the paper. Pyrazines may help to optimize nicotine delivery and dosing and promote addiction through cueing, learned behavior, and/or direct effects. Pyrazines and learned behavior. Remember, this is a chemical they add to substances that provide aroma, and when you inhale them to your sensory bulb in your nose, called the olfactory bulb, this aroma molecule makes you addicted to whatever you're smelling, and they add this chemical to all tobacco products. Pyrazine stimulation of the olfactory bulb, which is responsible for your sense of smell, may enhance learned behavior either by acting alone, not with nicotine, alone, or in combination with other sensory stimuli things. And pyrazines can reinforce smoking through associative learning and motivate increased desire or wanting, or even unrestrained consumption. By definition, addiction means unrestrained consumption. It does not mean you do something this year and 12 months from now you want to do it again. It's unrestrained. You cannot break away from it. Anybody ever know anybody addicted to like Oxycontin? These painkiller drugs, these opioids? I've had personal friends try to come off of them. They are shaking all night, teeth chattering, and they're going crazy, and then they've actually taken a shotgun to their brain and blew it off. That's what addiction does. One of my dear friends did that in 2007. It's awful. All right, in the Harvard study, this is a list of the 15 pyrazines the FDA allows every tobacco giant to add to every cigarette and nicotine-containing tobacco product they manufacture in America. So they have one chemical called nicotine found in the tobacco plant, and they're allowed to add 15 other man-made chemicals to make it addictive. How many of you have ever seen a billboard or a warning on a tobacco product that says this product contains pyrazines, an addictive chemical? Have you ever seen it? No. Okay. All right. Pyrazines, a class of chemosensory agents, comprise 15 of the, read them, John.
599.
599 compounds on the list of cigarette ingredients provided by manufacturers to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in 1994. The FDA allows the tobacco giants to add 599 chemicals to tobacco products. Who can name them off the top of their head? Who can say which one of those that you can name off are the ones that cause cancer or cause addiction? How many of you can name them? The sensory inputs of pyrazine flavor additives might also provide cues for reward-related learned behaviors and can play a critical role in the development, maintenance, and relapse of tobacco dependence. Just so you know, Harvard did this study with animals. They wanted to know how addictive is nicotine compared to cocaine, heroin, and other addictive products, and they couldn't for 6 months get an animal to want nicotine after the first dose. This group, you're about to see it. Oh, I actually passed it. I'm going to show you this. This is crazy to me. Down here, they reference manufacturers' ingredient reports. They're going to tell you in this paper that Harvard read 7 million pages of tobacco giant R&D papers since the 1970s. to figure out what makes their products addictive because it wasn't nicotine. Have you guys read those 7 million pages? I haven't. Not yet. Substantial, not minute, substantial evidence exists to suggest that flavor ingredients are used in cigarette starter products. They're talking about pyrazines, which increase cigarette experimentation and may help establish smoking behaviors that could lead to a lifetime of addiction. You got to be careful. They use pyrazines as starter products to get people hooked on products like cigarettes that have 599 other compounds that will create health-related issues that you will go to the medical doctor and they will pump you full of salt for. This is the first, Harvard says, I couldn't believe this. This is the first report to document the tobacco industry's incorporation of pyrazine compounds into cigarettes since the early 1970s. This is the first report and review of this stuff for 40 years. No one else has ever done it, which appear to contribute to the product's appeal and abuse potential. And then look at this statement. They're going to get to it in a second, sorry. The effect of pyrazines in the cigarettes, as described in industry documents, reflect a range of processes by which such non-nicotine constituents might increase tobacco product abuse potential. Several pyrazine derivatives have also been found to potentiate 5-HT binding to receptors in the central nervous system, which results in enhanced dopamine release independent of nicotine. We know this reward sensation of this hormone dopamine, don't we? We want that dopamine hit. Conclusions of the Harvard study. This was my favorite part. Cigarette additives and ingredients with chemosensory effects that promote addiction by acting synergistically with nicotine and discourage cessation or stopping or promoting relapse should be regulated by the FDA. But they are not. Says Harvard. Did Dr. Ardis make that up? No. I have to trust scientists like Dr. Judy and others to do the actual work. And then it takes human beings to go read it, decipher it, for us lay people to understand it. All right, so how do I know that nicotine is not addictive? What other plants contain nicotine? Hold up, you're going to see them. Bell peppers. Anybody had a bell pepper before in your life? What about cauliflower? Cauliflower has nicotine. What about zucchini? Who likes zucchini bread? Oh my goodness. Did anybody bring any here? Because I'll stop right now. And we can go in the bathroom break. What about, wait, that's a tomato. Has anybody ever eaten a tomato? These are pretty rare veggies, usually only found in every grocery store in America and restaurant. Every tomato. Tomatoes are the third highest containing plant on earth that has nicotine. The number 2 behind tobacco is eggplant. Somebody already screamed out. Green tomatoes actually have 10 times more nicotine than red tomatoes. You ever see sweet magnolias? That's why those women were so happy. They were addicted to each other's company. They were way excited every time they ate it. And then has anybody ever eaten this food? It's called a white potato. Did y'all know that white potatoes had nicotine? So remember that one study I put up there in the pediatric journal where it said nicotine addiction, a pediatric disease? Do you remember that? Okay. Any of you ever taken your kids or grandkids or people ever gone through a Chick-fil-A drive-thru and got them waffle fries? You're giving your kids nicotine in yourself. Did you know every potato chip on earth made by Frito-Lay that is a potato has nicotine in it? Did you know that? All right, now the next question is how come none of you were told this?
Because it's not addictive.
Yeah, but why aren't there labels on tomatoes and eggplants that say, warning, this vegetable has nicotine, an addictive chemical. You might eat this eggplant sliver as your option for a beef burger, and you're going to wake up with night sweats, shakes, when you become addicted to eggplant. Next question. Have any of you ever had a coworker ask you or a boss or manager for a celery or cauliflower break? zucchini break, tomato break, bell pepper break, potato break. I mean, all of you have eaten one of these. Raise your hand if you've ever eaten one of these veggies. You bunch of addicts. Y'all should all stand up here and introduce yourselves to each other. And I am a nicotine addict. All right, this is an article, just so y'all know it's just not me. I just have to read this to you because I find this really ironic. This is the surprising truth about nicotine in your food. Did you know that some of the foods you eat every day contain nicotine? Yes, the same addictive substance that is found in cigarettes and tobacco products. But don't worry, you're not going to get hooked on tomatoes or potatoes anytime soon. So is nicotine addictive or is it not addictive, man? Because I'm telling you, if I told you arsenic was a poison, is it a poison always? I mean, if I just gave you a little bit every single day in your water, is it still going to kill you? Versus like a lot in one day? Okay. Arsenic is a poison. It is a poison substance to the human body. You can handle minute amounts, but the truth is still the truth. 6 foods you may not have realized contain nicotine. This is another article. Aubergine. Just so y'all know, I have played a lot of Scrabble in my life, and that word has never ended up on the board. So I had to go look it up. That is eggplant, in case nobody knew. Dr. Ardis, of all the things he knows, did not know that. I had to look it up. Potatoes. Did you know that green tea and black tea contain nicotine? You little addicts. Tomatoes, cauliflower, green peppers. This is just a summary from multiple research studies. Notice my name's not up there. They figured out how much nicotine, nanogram per gram of weight of each of these foods has nicotine in them and what amounts. This is very important, by the way, that you know this info. You're about to find out why. All right, how much nicotine is in one cigarette? I had to look this up too. A person absorbs 1 to 1.5 milligrams of nicotine from a cigarette stick. Just so you know. And then there's this article. Can dietary nicotine help fight Parkinson's disease? A number of studies suggest that dietary nicotine might have the ability to slow the progress of Parkinson's disease. Does anybody here know anybody that's had Parkinson's or has struggled with Parkinson's? Have you ever heard that individual tell you that their neurologist recommended to them nicotine patches, nicotine gum, or any of those veggies? Okay. Why the F not? This isn't a chiropractic news today study or article. It says medical. I'm assuming this is for medical professionals, not the alternative whack jobs who know how to read. All right, so if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The second part, I would say, let's just confirm, have they continued to repeat this lie over and over and over? Okay, good. Did you believe it up until the time I walked in here, or maybe even now? Maybe you still believe it. Okay, good, you should. They've repeated it every day. Joseph Goebbels said, you say it a lot, you'll believe it. All right, the lie can be maintained only for such time as the state, we're going to go through the second part. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people, you are the people, me too. They cannot tell you the political, economic, and military consequences of that lie. And I'm going to tell you right now, to tell all of us that nicotine is an addictive chemical has massive political, massive economic, and massive military consequences. And I'm about to show you what they are. So we're going to focus on this part of the lie. What possible reasons would the state have to want to lie to us every single day for decades about nicotine being addictive when it is not? The state, beginning in 1994, had to create a lie and had to repeat it every single day to shield all people from the looming political, economic, and military consequences of that lie. The state did not tell you that they had been planning something big that would impact global politics, threaten global economies, and would have huge military consequences. They had to shield all people from knowing the plan. They also knew that this diabolical plan had one mortal enemy, nicotine. And what's crazy is you start to realize this is how far ahead the state is making their plans and shielding you from it. When did they start this lie? What year? 1994. So what was being planned since 1994? COVID-19. All right, so we're going to focus on the word plan, right? The state's plans. This is 2020, the Biden-Harris plan to beat COVID-19. All right, so would we all agree the White House could be seen as a part of the state? Yeah? Am I incorrect in highlighting that up there? Okay, so we're going to look at the White House as a part of the state. All right, this is the state, the White House. This is the quote from Joe Biden. This isn't about politics. It's about saving lives. All right, now the planning, we're going to go right down here because the actual state is going to tell you the plan. Plan is for the effective, equitable distribution of treatments and vaccines, because development isn't enough if they aren't effectively distributed. So the plan is for some kind of treatments and vaccines. All right, so let's look at the plan. The plan includes, first thing, the state is going to invest $25 billion in a vaccine manufacturing and distribution plan that will guarantee it gets to every American cost-free. All right, so this is, the state is telling you this is the plan of the state for COVID-19. What's the first highlighted statement? What was the plan, John?
Invest $25 billion in vaccines.
Yep, and how many arms?
Wait. Plan for the effective.
Read the whole thing.
Plan for the effective, equitable distribution of.
No, just the one with the arrow.
Invest $25 billion in vaccine manufacturing and distribution plan that will guarantee it gets to every American cost-free.
How many Americans? Every American. This is the plan. The plan is to vaccinate every single human in America, no matter how old you are. Is this pretty clear? This is the plan? Yes. This is the overall looming plan of the state. We're going to ensure that politics plays no role in determining the safety and efficacy of any vaccine. Those are the plans. All right, so the plan is, let's just inject the world. Now, the World Economic Forum is going to get in on this also, okay? They actually invite all state heads to come to one building and talk about their plans, okay? We're going to tell you what the plan is, states. Here's how we, including the World Economic Forum, can vaccinate the world against COVID-19. This is how we can distribute life-saving hydroxychloroquine to the rest of the world that John is over here building an incredible film in his garage about. Now, that wasn't the plan. The plan is to vaccinate the whole world. In fact, Pope Francis in 2021 says, what the world needs more is vaccines and less war. All right, so I have one question, and I want an honest answer. If Jesus' second coming was during the pandemic, which vaccine do you think he would have chosen? You know, he said, follow me. Which one would he have gotten? All right, so what if Jesus comes down right now, but his return comes to America, and then he's going to go to the people after visiting America and go over to Africa. I'd like to ask you, before he travels from the U.S. and goes to Africa, which of the vaccines required to go to Africa do you think he will get? Yellow fever, malaria, which one? Dengue, which one? Zero. Okay, well, if he wouldn't do it, why would you do it? I mean, the Pope's telling you to do it. Do you remember what I said? The state has to shield from you the political ramifications, the economical, and the military. Do you see the military consequences here? I mean, the Pope's even talking about it. Less war. Do you know what he has repeated every day since he started yapping in his mouth during COVID? What the world needs is more vaccines, and we need to defund all militaries in the world and loosen all of our borders. That is the consistent message 24/7. So why did the state lie to the whole world about nicotine and repeat the lie for decades before their global vaccine plan rollout? This is why they had to lie to you. Because as early as May of 2020, These reports are coming out in the mainstream media. Smokers seem less likely than non-smokers to fall ill with COVID-19. News Medical Life Sciences is also reporting study shows lower SARS-CoV-2 infection rates in smokers. Okay, if the state's got a plan to vaccinate all people in America, they can't afford people not to get COVID and get sick. They won't think they need a vaccine. Do you follow this? This is October 2021. Is there a smoker's paradox in COVID-19? This is 2020. Although it is well established that cigarette smoking is associated with morbidity and mortality, disease, and death in several respiratory infections, data from recent studies suggests that active smokers, those smoking during COVID, are underrepresented among patients with COVID-19. This has led to claims that there must be a smoker's paradox that exists in COVID-19, wherein smokers are protected from the infection and severe complications from COVID-19. Did you hear Anthony Fauci come out and say, "Light up, America"? There's no better time than now to light up everybody, because there's studies from around the world in the first 5 months of COVID that smokers aren't ending up in hospitals with COVID. In fact, they're not even getting COVID. No, what have they continued to say? To this day, every Paxlovid, whatever you want to call it, drug of Pfizer, every commercial you see says smokers are at the highest risk for getting COVID right now. And yet, it is still the least represented group of people on the earth of all groups. You put any category, you could put Mormons in there, it wouldn't matter. Catholics in there, it doesn't matter. Smokers are the least ever to get COVID and ever get hospitalized and die from COVID worldwide. In fact, put a needle in a cigarette, that should be the vaccine. If I had a t-shirt, I'd make it. All right, I'm not going to read this last slide. It's a lot of cool stuff, but this further investigation into the interaction between smoking and COVID-19 is warranted for two main reasons. Number one, we need to assess the possibility that nicotine is a therapeutic option worldwide. Wow. This is 2020, people. There's a study out of the University of Wisconsin hospital system. They had a floor. This was in 2021. They had a floor that was designated for smokers, current smokers, active smokers who did get COVID. And they actually reported that within just a few days of starting the remdesivir COVID-19 protocol, remember, raise your hand if you believe smokers are allowed to smoke in a hospital. Okay, so these are active smokers who cannot smoke now. They're in a hospital. So now they're not allowed to smoke. And there were smokers, they had like 49 of these smokers in a whole floor. When 5 of them died, a medical doctor attending to that floor decided, after knowing these scientific papers were reporting around the world that smokers were not getting COVID, he put nicotine patches on every patient on the floor. That's the cool part, unless they all died. All of them went home in 5 days. No, he might have died, I don't know. However, I know this information didn't get out anywhere. I'm on stages all over the world and no MD's talking about this crap. What are they so afraid of? I didn't do it. The MDs did it in a hospital. Why don't you do it? Available evidence is mixed, they're saying in the beginning of this study. They're like, evidence is mixed. We're not sure. Is smoking really helpful? Nicotine really helpful? We don't know with COVID. It's concerning associations between smoking status, COVID-19 clinical outcomes, the effects of nicotine replacement therapy, and vaccination status on COVID. Outcomes in smokers are unknown. So they ran among current smokers, nicotine replacement therapy prescription was associated with a reduced mortality. When they started putting nicotine patches on these people, they stopped dying. Former smokers, but not current smokers hospitalized with COVID-19 are at a higher risk for severe outcomes. Those who quit smoking before they got COVID had worse outcomes. Nicotine replacement therapy during COVID-19 hospitalization may reduce mortality for current smokers. How many people were told you're going to give them remdesivir? You're going to put them on a vent. You're going to put them on 5 sedation drugs, Precedex, lorazepam, fentanyl, morphine, midazolam, and put them on nicotine patches. Did you hear that? No. Then there's this article, October 2021. Smokers are less likely to get COVID. French researchers explore whether nicotine might prevent transmission. French researchers, that nicotine might prevent transmission. Do you remember what they were telling you? Hey, Grandma and Grandpa, you better make sure your grandkids are vaccinated. They're super spreaders. And even though you got the vaccine, they could still spread it to you. What a load of crap. Could you imagine this? Anybody remember scurvy? Scurvy. Okay, 2.6 million people died in just like 10 years from scurvy. Now, at the time, everybody tried to figure out, was this an infectious disease? No one had a clue. Was it a demonic possession? They didn't know. These ships were washing up on shore with just all dead bodies. They had no idea what was wrong with these people. Then they figured out that the ships where the individuals were eating a lemon or a lime or an orange every day weren't dying ever. And pirates figured this out real quick, so they would go looking for all the ships with no crew who were all dead, and they would just pillage everything that was on those ships, because all of them realized one lemon, one lime, one orange would prevent all deaths from scurvy. It took like 100 years later to figure out that what was in an orange, lemon, or lime that was preventing deaths from COVID was a substance called vitamin C. And the vitamin C amount in each of those fruits was only 10 milligrams a day. In fact, even the Navy in England, they actually have a nickname still to this day for all of their sailors in the Navy. They're called limeys. They all could not leave without having on board a lime for every day to prevent dying from scurvy. Scurvy has been eradicated from the entire earth because of fruit. Did you know that if you bought one capsule of vitamin C today, that you could fit 1,000 milligrams into one capsule, but it only took 10 milligrams to cure the world of scurvy a day? That was millions of people died from a vitamin C deficiency, but the whole scientific world thought it was an infection that everybody needed to wear a mask for. I'm just joking. They didn't talk about masks back then. But there's some invisible boogeyman that's in the air killing these people, or spreading in the food or water or oceans, whatever, it's killing all these people. And it wasn't that. They had a nutritional deficiency. Did we need Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson to create a vaccine to beat scurvy? No. But if they did, it would have been a vitamin C injection, and all of you would fell for it. All right, so 2022, lower rate of daily smokers with symptomatic COVID. Amongst inpatients, daily smokers represented only 2.2% and 3.4% of the 45 dead patients and of the 29 patients transferred to ICU, respectively. The rate of daily smokers was significantly lower in patients with symptomatic COVID as compared to that in the French general population. So they looked at the whole France country. They saw the percentage of all the people that smoke is like 10%, but what they found was 90% of all people who were never coming to the hospital, actually 98% of all people who were not coming, were smokers. It was only the non-smokers that were showing up in the hospitals. For the whole country, it was only 2% of all people. Daily smoker rate in patients with symptomatic COVID is lower as compared to the French general population. What did other French researchers discover about COVID-19 and nicotine? Someone's going to have to stand up and say, "Shut up, Dr. Ardis, it's break time." Just so you know, I don't know when that is. So if y'all get bored or whatever, and you want to walk out, or you don't like something I'm saying, it's okay, plug your ears and walk out. And then come back. But until somebody tells me to stop and it's break time, I'm just going to keep yapping, okay? What did other French researchers discover about COVID-19 and nicotine? This is very, very important. Anybody seen Lord of the Rings? Yes. I think this guy even helped with that production. Or something. A little bit. I heard an interview he sent me where he's talking about it. In the Lord of the Rings, there's this little golem creature who calls this ring his precious. But it's often referenced that there is one ring and one ring that rules them all. Okay? This study is the one and only of tens of thousands of research studies on COVID that rule them all. And it was done in April of 2020 in France. 4 years ago. April 2020, French researchers isolate the spike proteins of COVID. Now, I find this ironic. The researchers in Paris, France contacted the UK and China and said, hey, can you ship to us the spike proteins of COVID? And they got them in a box. Is that weird to you? Okay. So they get isolated spike proteins from COVID, yet no one's been able to ship the actual virus to anybody. But they get the spike proteins, these little like red things you see around here they want you to think are spike proteins. All right, so spike protein genes of COVID-19 virus, and they do DNA testing. And this is their paper. At the end of their research and conclusions of DNA testing, they actually call the title of their paper a nicotine hypothesis for COVID-19 with prevention and therapeutic implications. As a result of what they discovered, they did not know they were going to discover anything about nicotine. They wanted to know, see the little red box up there? What is SARS-CoV-2? That's the spike proteins of COVID. They got in a box. Ask your government to send you some spike proteins. See what you get in the mail. So they ran those isolated protein. They put them into these spike proteins. They put them into some kind of machine that analyzes DNA sequence, and it printed out on paper what it was identical to. The spike proteins of COVID, April 2024. And they said it's most identical to cobra toxin, which is venom from the king cobra, and from bungarotoxin, which happens to be venom from a snake called the Chinese crate snake. In Latin, they have Latin names for every animal. Remember, I had all these documentaries and little pamphlets on animals my whole life. You read the English name, right? You call it a dog, but they call it a canine. You know what I mean? They just have different names for stuff. They also found that it was identical to 3 parts of 3 different rabies virus sequences. And this was interesting because I had people come up to me in California at an event 2 years ago, and they're like, oh my God, every symptom I had was rabies. There's your sign. All right, so I'm going to focus on these 2 neurotoxic venoms from these 2 snakes because these scientists said, finally, now that we know what these things are, thank you UK, thank you China for shipping them to us, we can now explain why smokers aren't ending up with COVID in April of 2020, 4 years ago. Nicotine may be suggested as a potential preventative agent against COVID-19 infection. Both the epidemiological and clinical evidence and the in silico lab findings may suggest that COVID-19 infection is a NACHR disease. That stands for nicotinic acetylcholine receptor disease. Nicotine receptors, I will call it for short from now on. That could be prevented. It's a nicotine disease, nicotine receptor disease that could be prevented and may be controlled by nicotine. Nicotine would then sterically or allosterically compete. If nicotine's in the body and SARS-CoV-2 virus is in the body, nicotine will compete for the same binding sites as SARS-CoV-2. This legitimates the use of nicotine as a protective agent against SARS-CoV-2 infection and the subsequent deficit it causes in the central nervous system. Thus, in order to prevent the infection and the retropropagation of the virus through the central nervous system, the brain of all of us, we plan a therapeutic assay against COVID-19 with nicotine, nicotine patches, or other delivery methods like sniffing, chewing in hospitalized patients and in the general population. Now, I want to highlight this, the neurotoxin motifs. These are like the write-ups over here of what those sequences are genetically. They write these motifs, these gene sequences are found in toxins from snakes of the cobra and the bungarus genre. And in case you don't know what those are, this is the king cobra, this is a crate snake. And you'll see to the right over here it says bungarus flaviceps. Bungarus is where they get the bungarotoxin name from. Got it? Anybody clear on this? Anybody confused? There seems to be a lot of medical doctors confused in the world when I talk. I just need them to read. In conclusion, they state, this is incredible. John, this should be in your next documentary. In conclusion, we propose and try to justify the hypothesis that nicotine receptors play a critical role in the disease process of SARS-CoV-2 infection. And as a consequence, we propose nicotine and nicotinic agents as a possible therapy for SARS-CoV-2. This next statement, in April of 2020, they knew why ivermectin was working. Look at this. Interestingly, ivermectin, which has been recently shown to inhibit the replication of SARS-CoV-2 in cells in a lab, is a positive allosteric modulator of alpha-7 nicotine receptors. It binds to nicotine receptors too. You're welcome. Because now you can explain it. It's amazing. These guys figured it out. All right, so do you or anyone you know still suffer with any of these symptoms? You might just want to look at the list, because if anybody in your life or yourself got COVID 2, 3, 4 years ago, and months later you started seeing increasing in symptoms that just won't go away. There is a list of what they call long hauler COVID symptoms that just won't go away and continue to get worse. And there are 21 of them that they have compiled now. They either call it long hauler COVID or they call it post-COVID syndrome. Okay? If you know anybody that is struggling with this group of scientists decided in January of 2023, not me, a 37-year Navy admiral out of DC contacted me on an unknown phone number to get me this study that he said was circulating in the Pentagon, and Washington, D.C. was trying to squash it and bury it. And he contacted me, then texted it to me on some unknown number and said, tell the world about this study. In January 2023, a study was published by Mark Oletsky, which highlights 4 case studies of long hauler COVID patients and their miraculous recovery in just 6 days of using 7 milligram nicotine patches topically. Here's the link to the study. The conclusion of the study, we quote, treating several individuals suffering from post-COVID-19 syndrome with a nicotine patch application, we witnessed improvements ranging from immediate and substantial to complete remission in a matter of days. Now, in order to be included in this study, they only surveyed people who had long hauler COVID symptoms for 1.5 to 2 years that was never resolved with a drug or any PT therapy or OT therapy. And they have never in their life touched a known tobacco product. That was the requirements. They had to be what they called tobacco naive. And every single one of them were scared to death that they were going to be addicted. This is the study, January 2023. Is the post-COVID that our government, the state, wanted to suppress. Remember, the state has to use all of its powers to repress dissent. We can't let Dr. Ardis figure this out. Because I will tell you, I don't care what threat there is. They already killed someone in my family. I don't give a crap what they say. Is the post-COVID-19 syndrome a severe impairment of the acetylcholine orchestrated neuromodulation, the brain, that responds to nicotine administration? Now, I'm going to show you these real quick. I'm sure it's close to break time. I feel like I'm talking for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, it's already been 2 hours? Holy crap. Okay. This is the first case study. At the bottom, you will see they listed out the list of the symptoms they struggled with for up to 2 years. Never lost their dizziness. It kept getting worse. Loss of taste and smell, diarrhea, chest tightness and pain for up to 2 years. And they asked them 4 days before they start the nicotine patch. The red line is the nicotine patch. They wanted them to only wear nicotine patches for 6 days. No one wore a patch longer than 6 days. So they chart the severity of their symptoms on a scale of 0 to 8 for 4 days before they start the nicotine patch. You will notice on day 1 of the nicotine patch over here, you already see the majority of their symptoms falling off. Do you see that? The colors represent their symptoms. So they only wore it for 6 days. All of their symptoms were gone by day 16. How long did they wear the patches for? 6 days. That meant for 10 more days, the circulating nicotine cured them of all the other symptoms. Every single one of these scenarios, by the way, before the scientists published it in January of 2023, last year, they said we're not going to publish this until we call them all back and find out after 6 months of not wearing a nicotine patch, how many of those crazy symptoms did ever return. Not a single one returned. 6 months later. All right, so here we go. Case number 2, a female, 31 years age, chronic fatigue. How many of you heard of chronic fatigue as an issue since COVID, worldwide? Chronic fatigue, headache, loss of taste and smell, chest tightness, exercise intolerance, memory lapses, dementia, Joe Biden. Somebody get that man on a nicotine patch. We're going to hell in a handbasket tomorrow.
Trump's gonna text him.
Trump's going to test him for his addiction to nicotine. Concentration difficulties. This person, female, 31 years. You're going to notice 6 days is the top red number, okay? You're going to notice in those 6 days, you see there were pretty level symptoms, day 1 through 4, before starting the first day patch. And you'll notice the spiking of their symptoms. Do you see that? The authors describe this as a viremia symptom. The nicotine is helping you detox venoms out of your body. They're stuck to cells in your body, creating the symptoms. The moment nicotine gets in there, they get released. They don't evaporate. They have to come out of your body. How does your body eliminate poisons? You're going to throw them up, diarrhea them out. You're going to go through sweats and fevers and chills. You're going to cough them out. You're going to bleed them out if you're a female. The body detoxes this way. They called these viremia symptoms. So they would see, as their body was releasing venoms and having to manage them, they would see some fever spikes, reduction in symptoms, increase in symptoms for a moment, but they told them never take off the patch. Even if you get nauseous for a second, diarrhea, just don't remove it. And they said every symptom of the detoxing would disappear in 2 hours or less. They would have a wave of nausea for 2 hours and it disappeared. Don't take it off. So you see the jumps and jumps and jumps. They stop after 6 days, and you'll see here this list of this female's problems for 2 years. Day 23, all are at 0. They only wore it for 6 days. Nicotine continued to circulate in the body and continued to heal them. All right, this guy. John is not this way. This guy, John, right here. But most men in this room are like this. If I told you this would do X, you think twice as much is better because you're a dude. You're like, you know what, this is a 5-hour energy. And you're like, well, if I do 2, that'll be 10. I'll do it right now. This is men. This guy is listening to the research and he's like, you know what, I've been struggling with these symptoms for 2 years now. I'm going to do it. Except if nicotine's the cure, I'm doubling that damn dose. I'm putting 2 patches on first day. If they think it's going to work, I'm sick of this crap. I'm doing both 2 at once. This dude, within 2 hours, started puking, diarrhea. And that guy called he only did it one day. One day. And he called the researchers and he said, I'm not doing this anymore. It made me vomit. And they said, why would it make you vomit? What'd you do? And he goes, oh, I decided if one was good, 2's going to be better. Like a man. And he said he's done, he's not doing it because it made him really sick. And they said, great, don't do it anymore. Just will you please keep letting us follow up with you daily like we're doing with everybody else? We want to see at what point do any of all your symptoms possibly disappear. We don't know. We're learning here. One day, by day 15, all of his symptoms for 2 years is all gone. Isn't that crazy? Here's number 4. I know there's going to be questions. There is, just so y'all know, I think there's a period at the end of this afternoon where there is a Q&A. So I'll answer anything you got. Just write them down. All right, so this is the next person. They decide, because this male is opposite of the other guy. He's like, you know what? I'm not really sure. I'll cut it in half and do half of it the first day. Maybe the first 2 days. So he only does half the dose, then he kicks it up to the full dose. But you'll notice this guy did it for 6 days too. Look at the day all of his symptoms disappeared, which included chronic fatigue for almost 2 years, mood disorders. Just so you know, there's been an explosion of schizophrenia, bipolarism, delusions, hallucinations, crazy stuff. Mood disorders, dyspnea, difficulty taking a deep breath, chest tightness and pain, concentration difficulties, heart palpitations for 2 years, sleep difficulties. He wore a patch, half for 3 days, the full for 3 days, and on the very next day, all of his symptoms disappeared. Day 7. Have you ever had heart palpitations and your cardiologist tell you that nicotine might be right for you? Now I'm going to wrap up this study, and then somebody tell me if we're done with the time. This is a great wrap-up point. In each case, signs of exhaustion, such as fatigue, weakness, breathlessness, and exercise intolerance, improved rapidly and across the board following nicotine exposure. At the very latest, by day 6. These are people struggling for 1.5 years to 2 years. In cases with impairment of loss of the senses of taste and smell, improvement was observed over a longer period, with complete restoration of these senses over anywhere from 13 to 16 days. I have seen complete remittance of all symptoms in 30 minutes of 1 piece of nicotine gum. Will I become addicted to the nicotine patches? The study authors address these concerns, and I'm going to show them to you. Transcutaneous, that means through the skin, a patch. Administration of nicotine ensures constant blood levels without relevant peak levels. Thus, we did not see any development of nicotine dependency in the context of nicotine patch therapy. From the author's point of view, this is not to be expected. The conclusions of the study, I just want to read this, because this is, to me, when a scientist publishes this, and all medical doctors who are treating patients, all clinicians of any field, sphere, they rely on scientists to tell them what's working and not working. And what should we try? Based on the results of this case study, this treatment option using nicotine patches to combat long hauler COVID seems far superior to the time-consuming, often underwhelming or disappointing, costly and complex rehabilitation measures currently available to these patients. I only recommend in all my interviews one brand of nicotine patches if you're going to do it. It's the Rugby brand. People get better with any of them, but some people like to read ingredient labels. I find that interesting because there was none for any of the 5 billion that just got injected with vaccines. Do you really give a crap about labels? No, you don't. We don't care what's in it, just give it to me. Rugby is the cleanest as far as adhesive components. Even some people that are sensitive to latex, adhesives and stuff, they don't respond to this. My wife still itches because she doesn't do well with adhesives. She just chews the gum every day. This is Nicoderm. You can use them. Tobacco products contain nicotine, and if nicotine found in tobacco products is known to be an antidote for the state-planned and future COVID-19 pandemic, and the major consequence of the plan is to vaccinate the whole world for COVID-19, the state would need to cover or shield the whole world from the curing power of nicotine. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. It's just a few of these little clips from the mainstream media, courtesy of your government and mainstream media. During COVID, ready? Here we go. I'm going to show you. It's vitally important that they suppress this. How'd they do it during COVID? All right, so this is April 2020. Wow. The same month the French researchers figured out nicotine was a cure for COVID. News Medical Life Sciences publishes smokers need to quit during coronavirus pandemic. The NIH also says in August of 2022, smoking associated with increased risk of severe COVID-19 outcomes. CBS News, smoking, vaping increases risk of death from COVID, finds study. The Seattle Times, young smokers at risk for severe COVID-19 symptoms that non-smokers their age. USA Today, people who smoke are prioritized to get the COVID-19 vaccine before the general population. We better hurry up and vaccinate those guys because they're not going to get sick. NBC Think, coronavirus may be worse for smokers and vapors and youth won't save you. World Health Organization, the WHO, supports people quitting tobacco to reduce the risk of severe COVID-19. Wow, y'all don't read either. The National Public Radio, coronavirus epidemic gives smokers another scary reason to quit. The CDC, I want to ask you, look up here. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. I wanted to know from the time the FDA started lying to all of us, how many people in America fell for the lie? How many people eventually believed it? Check this out. Okay. In 1990, an estimated 89 million of American adults were smokers. That's 50% of the entire American adult population. 1994, they start telling you nicotine is addictive and everybody should quit smoking. Okay? This is, what year is this? Can we see the year? 2021. In 2021, nearly 12 of every 100 U.S. adults aged 18 years or older is smoking. What's the percentage? 11% of all adults. All right, so in 20-something years, the FDA published and repeated a lie so big and so commonly that it went from half of American adults smoking to almost 10% were smoking and 90% of Americans were not, which made 90% of all Americans now ripe targets for their venom-laced COVID-19 agenda that you would get sick and you would buy into their damn vaccine agenda, which I just showed you was the White House, the state's plan from the very beginning. Their plan was to vaccinate the whole world. It was obvious. Now, if y'all are interested, I will dive into some of this stuff if we're out of time. I have 3 minutes. Let's see how fast I can do this. Ready? You want to see some other truths about nicotine that the state had to shield you from? How about this? PubMed.gov, 2021. Molecular insights into the benefits of nicotine on memory and cognition. How many of you neurologists are encouraging you to use nicotine because it improves memory and cognition? The health risks of nicotine are well known. Yeah, thanks, FDA. But there is some evidence of its beneficial effects on cognitive function. Nicotine administration can improve cognitive impairment in Alzheimer's and the movement issues called dyskinesia and memory impairment in Parkinson's. In terms of its mechanism of action, nicotine slows the progression of Parkinson's disease by inhibiting this thing called sirtuin 6, a stress-responsive protein, thereby decreasing death of neurons and improving nerve cell survival. Did you know nicotine helps your nerves in your brain survive? Anybody here know anybody with Alzheimer's and dementia and their neurologist recommended nicotine for them? Why the F not? You don't read? In Alzheimer's disease, nicotine improves cognitive impairment. You're welcome. Nicotine may also activate thyroid receptor signaling pathways to improve memory impairment caused by hypothyroidism. How many of you know someone with an underfunctioning thyroid and your endocrinologist said you need Synthroid, levothyroxine, and nicotine? And why the hell don't they tell you? Why does the chiropractor have to tell you? And why don't you want to tell your patients you were wrong? The biggest problem with most humans in the world is they are afraid to death that they will ever be found out that they said something and later was found out it was wrong. And I don't understand why that's so scary. There's no gun to your head. That would be the scariest thing for me. And no vaccine being held over your arm. What are you so scared of? Anybody in here believe they've actually said everything correctly their whole life and never got anything wrong? Raise your hand. Who in here believes they are God and know all things all the time? If God's in this room, I'm sitting down. I don't know everything. I don't know why anybody else pretends to. In healthy individuals, nicotine improves memory impairment caused by sleep deprivation. Oh my God. Have you ever seen a child in high school who is having a hard time memorizing his crap for your lame-ass public school system crap and telling you to take nicotine patches and give them to your kid? What part of your life outside of university appears in front of you with a multiple choice question? When the IRS sends you a letter, do they go, hey, you owe this much taxes. Are you going to pay A, B, C, or D? Furthermore, nicotine may improve memory function through its effect on chromatin modification via the inhibition of histone deacetylases. Ask Judy what that means, which causes transcriptional changes. Wait, listen, this is important.
I'm going to tell you.
You gotta watch this. Hold on. The most important part of this is nicotine may improve memory function in those with memory-related genes. When your effing MD tells you you inherited Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's from your loved one, so what? Nicotine prevents them from showing up. Finally, nicotine administration has been demonstrated to rescue long-term potentiation in individuals with sleep deprivation, Alzheimer's disease, chronic stress, and hypothyroidism, primarily by desensitizing the alpha-7 nicotine receptors that the venoms of COVID were targeting. Thank you, French researchers. To conclude, nicotine has several cognitive benefits in healthy individuals as well as in those with cognitive dysfunction associated with various diseases. Okay, I said, Joseph Goebbels said, they have to shield from you the military, economic, and the political ramifications of the lie. What would be the economic benefit to the FDA, every government health agency, the AMA, to tell you that nicotine is addictive? Zero. No. There is a huge benefit to the FDA, to the AMA, and to all the government health agencies to tell you nicotine is addictive. What is it? Okay, can anybody name the myriad of prescription drugs that are actually prescribed to people with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, hypothyroidism? I just listed off a whole bunch of stuff here. Sleep deprivation. Lunesta deficiency is why you can't sleep. Why did they tell you don't eat salt? Buy our salt. They need to sell you their products. So they have to lie to you and say, avoid your salt. And everybody's going to be salt deficient, and we're going to be able to pump it into them. They're all going to feel better, and they have no idea we're just freaking messing with them. Nicotine reverses schizophrenia. Really? Now, just so y'all know, before any of y'all go like this, but yeah, that's a rat study. Okay. Do you know why research scientists research mice and rats before they research humans? They publish. Every mouse and every rat has exactly the same amount of chromosomes and genes you do as a human. And they state, I quote, if the disease progress is going to happen in a mouse, it's going to happen in a human. So when your MD goes like this, but that's an animal study, you need to fire that guy and leave because he has no clue what he's talking about. Chronic, he knows exactly what he's saying. You don't know what he's talking about. Chronic nicotine administration reversed this decrease in frontal lobe function of the brain of these animals, suggesting that administration of nicotine may represent a therapeutic strategy for the treatment of schizophrenia and a physiological basis for the tendency of patients with schizophrenia to self-medicate by smoking. The number one thing all schizophrenics want to do is self-medicate with smoking, and they get benefits from smoking. Less delusions, less hallucinations, less irritation. Nicotine self-administration reverses cognitive deficits in rat model for schizophrenia. This is another study, 2018. Nicotine, but not saline, self-administered, significantly ameliorated the cognitive deficits induced by MIA. What is MIA? This substance that causes the schizophrenic tendencies. Nicotine, after they gave it to themselves in water, they preferred that over any other water. With the MIA-induced cognitive deficits significantly improved, these data lend support for the self-medication hypothesis of schizophrenia. Nicotine ameliorates schizophrenia-like cognitive deficits, 2016. Maternal exposure to infectious agents, the mom of an in utero baby. Exposure to infectious agents is a predisposing factor for schizophrenia with associated cognitive deficits in offspring. Repeated nicotine treatment led to global and selective improvements in performance. Nicotine reversed the LPS-induced deficits in selective attention and induced a global enhancement of the sensoromotor gating. So all neurological function improved with nicotine. Nicotine promotes nerve survival and partially protects from Parkinson's disease. Oh my God, seriously. Is this shocking to anybody? Has anybody got a loved one with Parkinson's right now? They're like, oh my God, where's the next CVS and Walgreens? If I had a loved one, that's exactly what I'd be doing. Or if you don't want an agent, what have I shown you you could make sure they get every single day? Vegetables. Nightshade vegetables is the largest range of any plants that all have nicotine in them. Okay, before I even get there, I'm just going to say this. Anybody here know anybody with arthritis? Ever heard of the word arthritis? Okay. Did you know nicotine's a cure for arthritis and they know it? Did you know that every single person who's been diagnosed with arthritis, that same MD or rheumatologist is going to tell you that you need to avoid a specific group of vegetables while you take your prednisone? When I asked earlier, why don't you think the government has told you that nicotine is in these vegetables? Now you're starting to realize why they didn't even want to pronounce or publicize the truth. They would never sell as much prednisone the rest of your life and be able to tell you You inherited your arthritis in your 70s from your mom and dad. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because if you kept eating the nightshade vegetables every single day, you would see your arthritis disappear. And then you wouldn't need their steroids anymore. Are you starting to realize the racket? Oh, by the way, I said arthritis, and I can't wait for somebody to go, you didn't show it. Oh, it's up here. I'm just worried about y'all breaking for lunch, you know. It's coming. Remember I said it's like 380 slides. Watch this. What slide number on over there, Alex? Can you tell me?
231.
I'm on 231 out of 380. It's pretty good. All right, look at this. I'm going to do this one and one more study and wrap it up. Parkinson's disease is characterized by progressive death of nerves called dopaminergic nerves, leading to motor and cognitive dysfunction. Disease studies consistently show that the use of tobacco reduces the risk of Parkinson's. Do you know what they always say in the media? Smoking increases your risk of getting Parkinson's. Okay, hold up. You got to see this because this is freaking amazing. Watch what they reference here. They're going to talk about how nicotine reduces it, but I've got to show you this study. Okay, it's going to have to come up later. On Parkinson's patients, they're going to show you here, they took identical twins from all around the world, and they followed them for their whole life. And they wanted to know, identical twins, what makes them identical? Their genes. All right, so when they look at you and go, everyone who has Parkinson's got it from their parents' genes. An identical twin, if that identical twin developed Parkinson's disease, would the other twin, shouldn't they develop Parkinson's?
Yes.
In this, I must be in a different place. Because I was so excited to get to MS. Parkinson's, they looked at all of them. Do you know they couldn't find an identical twin in the world whose other twin had developed Parkinson's? The only time they didn't develop it were the ones that were chronic tobacco users. So I ask you, how is it possible that nicotine is preventing a genetic disorder from rearing its ugly head? It doesn't. You've been lied to. And now, I need to summarize this for you. One of the greatest lies they've figured out in medicine has done a couple things. They lie to you on every single symptom and disease and tell you that you inherited them. The reason why they figured out this is so powerful is because you know you can't do nothing about your genes. However, that is not why they found this so favorable. This did two things for the medical profession. They no longer had to work at all to be a doctor and help you figure out why your symptoms started. So just blanket sweep all things are genetic, and these individuals will believe there's nothing they can do about it now, and they will choke down and inject every known drug on earth that you prescribe to them because there's nothing that can be done. So I'm going to ask you some truths here, okay, to drive this home for you. I need you to think about your conceptual awareness and knowledge about the truth about genes. Anybody here a geneticist? I'd like to see some. Geneticist? Right here. Okay, good. So let's talk about genes. Genes that you inherited. You got these X, Y chromosomes. You know, you got all kinds of XX chromosomes that you inherit. All right. Think about the eye color you were born with. You came out of the womb and you had an eye color, and everybody standing around the room, the moment you open your eyes the first time, everybody got real excited to articulate what eye color that kid inherited from who? You got your mom's blue eyes? You got grandma's red eyes? That would have been my grandmother. You got Susie's green eyes, right? There is a well-established awareness that what you inherited at conception is there at conception, and when you come out, it's sitting there as you inherited it. A couple other examples. I have very Irish-like red-toned skin. I got that from my dad's side of my family. My mom can tan, he cannot. We have this red pigment. Everybody knew I got it from my dad. I inherited it from that Ardis line, right? Think about your own skin tone. What about your hair color before you dyed it? Your hair color, everyone was like, oh my God, you got Aunt Susie's red hair. You inherited it, and it was there at birth. Okay, I have to say this. Genes do not show up in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s, and in your 80s. They're there at birth. In fact, I'm going to give you an example that I would blow people away 20 years ago when I would go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, and I just opened up a new practice in this town. You want to come over? Great. I would actually put up on the slide 5 questions, true, false questions. First one always was, true or false? Do people get migraine headaches because they have an Advil or Tylenol deficiency? And that's the exact response. And I'd go like this, well then why are you choking down Advil and Tylenol like you're deficient? Scurvy was a reaction of people dying to a nutrient deficiency. If you had given them Imitrex, which is a migraine drug, or you gave them Tylenol or Advil, would that have fixed scurvy and stopped it from ever happening? No, it was a vitamin C deficiency, people. Every symptom you've ever had is caused by a nutritional deficiency, not your genetics. All right, I'm going to give you another example of how you know this is true. Okay. Any of you ever seen someone who actually has a mutation at a specific chromosome? In fact, it's called trisomy 21. Who knows what that is called? Down syndrome, okay? So the 21st chromosome has this mutation on it, and the characteristics of that individual at conception, but you don't see him until he's born, or her, you know they have physical characteristics that are defined by that mutation at that one chromosome. Follow me? In fact, it's called trisomy 21. It's only a problem with this one gene. Got it? How many of you have ever seen a Down syndrome individual? So you know what the characteristic looks like, right? Lowered ears, their eustachian tubes are like horizontal to the earth. You know, they have actually most of the first vertebrae in their necks aren't fused, so it's very scary. They can have neurological damage very easily. Their lives are usually not that long. All right, so this is a genetic issue. We know it's a gene problem. So, I want the first person to raise their hand who saw someone who was born normal, and in their 40s all of a sudden you go to your 30th or 20th high school reunion, and now that person is Down syndrome because they inherited the Down syndrome gene. You have all been lied to about every damn disease that has any symptom they gave you a diagnosis for if those symptoms showed up later in your life. And if you don't realize that, you better start studying something called epigenetics because it tells you how it works. It ain't about what you inherited. It's about what you put into the body, what goes into the body that expresses the genes you inherited or keeps them turned off. Follow me? And it goes for all of them. The industry wants to make sure you don't understand the benefits of the nutrients that God put into your plants and into your soils because it will prevent all of those things. If scurvy happened right now, the FDA would publish media alerts, no one is to eat oranges, lemons, or limes. And there would be an Operation Vitamin C vaccine. They wouldn't call it that. They'd call it Operation mRNA Scurvy Vaccine, and they would inject you with vitamin C. I'm Dr. Ardis. Go take a break.
Hey everyone, I'm Jules Wilson with Seven Gables Real Estate in Orange County. I'm so honored to be sponsoring today's event presented by Faith Warriors. Faith Warriors is all about fellowship, communities coming together, and most importantly, celebrating God's Word. To find out more about Faith Warriors, check them out on Facebook. Now let's head back to the event to learn more valuable information from Dr. Ardis.
Decreased risk of developing MS compared with those who have never used snuff. Ask your doctor if snuff is right for you. And we found clear evidence of an inverse dose-response correlation between cumulative dose of snuff use and the risk of developing the disease. John, I bet, can decipher that code. Do you want to try?
Let my
He needs coffee to sink in for a minute. What that statement says is, we found an inverse correlation to this. The more snuff people used, the less MS they would ever develop. In fact, read the next statement, it's pretty wild. We further observed that subjects who combined smoking and snuff use had a significantly lower risk for MS than smokers who had never used moist snuff. Our results add evidence to the hypothesis that nicotine exerts anti-inflammatory, not pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, and immune modulating effects, immune boosting and protective effects, in a way that might decrease the risk of developing MS. Anybody find that interesting? Anybody eat nicotine during lunch today? Raise your hand, seriously. Did anybody have anything in their food that had nicotine in it? Cauliflower, celery, eggplant, tomato. I'd be shocked if y'all didn't have nicotine this afternoon. You bunch of addicts. We're in the right place, boy. Me and you, John, we're in the right place. Nicotine in inflammatory diseases. Okay, this is important. This is from 2022. Okay. One of the greatest ways in which we have all been manipulated to see the medical profession and pharmaceutical industry as gods is because they use a language that the majority of subhumans, called non-MDs and non-pharmaceutical people, don't know and aren't taught. So we look at them as if they know something you don't know. And do y'all know what language it is? It makes it look like they know stuff you don't know. Latin. You want to look superior to somebody else, teach them a language the other people don't know. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of this. This is very important because this is 100% true. 80% of the time that you've ever known a human to go into a medical office and make a complaint about a symptom, 80% of the time, every medical visit ever, 80% of all of them, I said 80. 80% of all of them or higher, they state the diagnosis, the final diagnosis where the MD will say, this is what's wrong with you, 80% of the time they state the diagnosis comes from the history the patient gave you. Only 20% of the time or less does a test they will perform tell you what's wrong with them. Okay, so I'd like to ask you, when you go to your medical doctors, how many of you know an MD who will spend more time talking to you versus looking at test results or ordering test results? Have you ever seen a commercial for a drug? You ever notice that every drug commercial, if they show you a patient being interviewed by an MD, they take you into his office, and there's an MD sitting at the desk and the patient sitting across the desk, and they're just visiting. Has that ever happened to any of you? There you go. We got one right here. When you go to an MD, are you invited into his office to sit down and chat about your medical history? Hell no. Who are you talking to? A nurse. And then the nurse is listening to you, writing down all their notes. They're the beauty of the entire profession, in my opinion. And then the MD walks in, looks at whatever notes they wrote, and then they spend barely any time making eye contact with you, and will have a prescription pad they pull out and start writing your prescription without even talking to you. 80% of all diagnosis comes from the history of the patient. Now, I'm going to give you an example. You're going to walk in. Let's just say my name is John. John, I walk in and I say, hey, doc, this joint right here in my index finger, it hurts. All of a sudden it started hurting like a month ago. This joint right here. I wake up in the morning and it's hurting. And then the doc's going to ask me, John, does it feel better or worse after you use it throughout the day? Oh, it starts to get better as I use it. Good. That's an example of osteoarthritis in that guy's head, okay? The MD's head. If it's getting worse as I use it during the day, that would be something like an autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis in his head, okay? He's just asking questions. This would be an example of getting the history of the patient. You say a few things, the doctor's going to figure it out before they ever do a test 80% of the time. What you don't know, and what John doesn't know, is that when you described your symptom to the MD, and he's making his notes, What you don't know is the next thing he's going to write is, John, me, I'm John. John, thank you for telling me that you have pain in this joint every day for the last several months. We're going to have to order blood test. We're going to have to order an x-ray. We'll do a CT scan or whatever else they want to do. Come back in a few days, and after we get these test results, we'll be able to tell you what's wrong with you. Now, when I come back, no matter what is on any of those test results, the doctor already wrote down what was wrong with you before he sent you out for the test. He already wrote it down. And you're going to come in and sit down looking at this guy in a white coat that you know has a lot more education in medicine than you do. But that guy knows you don't know what he knows. And what he knows is he's memorized a lot of Latin terms that have an English translation. You just don't know that. So you're going to sit down and he's going to go, John, I have some good news, I have some bad news, bless you. I have some good news, I have some bad news. John, we know what's wrong with you. That's the good news. The bad news is you inherited it from your mom and dad. And there's nothing you can do about it. John, you have what is called in medicine arthritis. And then you, me, John, listening goes, I knew it! Yes! I told my friends I better have arthritis, and I do. I can now join that Facebook arthritis group, and there's a bunch of us so we can hang out together and complain about our arthritis. And don't let anybody join that group that hasn't been told by a guy in a white coat that he's got arthritis. They can't come in complaining about joint pain. No, no, no. They have to have the diagnosis. What you don't know. The word in Latin arthritis means arthra in Latin means joint. Itis means pain in. And what you said to him was, this joint hurts, man. Can you tell me what's wrong with it? He's like, this is the easiest insurance billing ever. Yeah, let's run a bunch of tests and come back on Tuesday. And I'll tell you what's wrong with you. Now, what you don't know is every single one of your diagnoses are the same. All of them. Except they decided not to give some of these diseases Latin names. They found it was better to give it a name of a person. So, let me clear this up for you. There's not a human on earth who has Parkinson's disease. Do you want to know how I know? Because John Parkinson's was a guy who described that scenario of symptoms. Unless you're going to tell me the doctor ran a blood test, looked under the microscope, and saw John Parkinson's waving back at him, you for sure don't have Parkinson's running around inside of you. It was a guy. Alzheimer's is the same way. That's the last name of a guy who said, you know what, if we just call dementia and other issues of cognitive dysfunction, let's just wrap that all up into one name and call it Alzheimer's. Anybody ever heard of lupus? Do you know lupus doesn't exist? Do you know it's not a real thing? Do you know if you look in the blood of a patient with lupus, there's nothing in there that says you have lupus. There is no lupus waving back going, ha ha ha, I'm eating all the joints of these people and making red butterfly rashes on their body. It doesn't exist. In fact, if they decide to tell you they found something in your blood, you know what they did? They looked for this little thing called ANA in your blood, and they're going to tell you, that thing means you have lupus. Oh, really? Take that same blood work to another specialist and go, hey, what does this mean? They're going to go, well, that can mean a lot of things. You could have Sjogren's. You could have fibromyalgia. You could have osteoarthritis. You could have diabetes. You could have any autoimmune disease on earth. That doesn't tell you a damn thing. But the MD is stuck in a quandary. You want to join a support group in social media. We've got hundreds of millions of victims who want to have other people collaborate in pity with each other because they all inherited a problem that was similar and none of you did. If you think you inherited a problem, tell Judy Mikovits, and then I expect you to enjoy the next 2 hours of your life trying to figure out what she said. But what it is she's going to tell you is, right out of her mouth is going to go, that's a bunch of BS. And then she's going to give you all the scientific reasoning of why it's BS. And all you needed to know was the very first statement. That's BS. Because what she's going to tell you is all the truth. That is all based on what I said earlier. It's your epigenetics, what's on top of your genes, not the genes. Doesn't matter if you inherited the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene. Can someone tell me what in the world they want you to believe about this damn gene is?
Somehow God made it breast cancer causing.
Okay, all right, so now everybody knows there is a breast cancer gene called the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene. And they are telling teenagers and young adults to get this blood test done to see if you carry the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, and if it comes back positive, please, for the love of God, someone tell me what the damn MD is going to say to you when it comes back positive. You need to cut off your breast right now and have reconstructive surgery to avoid ever inheriting this in the future. Judy, true or false? If you have the BRCA1 gene or BRCA2 gene and it is in your body, is that a definitive destiny for breast cancer?
No, it's expression of a DNA repair protein complex.
All right, listen.
Radiation poisoning.
Right.
So they irradiate you too, and you can't repair it fast enough.
Ask her how she really feels. All right, so like I said a second ago, I said you're going to hear the first thing out of her mouth. What was the first thing she said? No. You can try to figure out the rest. She said no. All right, so anybody ever read the book The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton? There's a whole chapter on the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene for breast cancer. Did you all read it? Okay. All right, so I have to tell you a story. Jane and I live next door to a couple. This couple have a child in their 20s. This daughter just graduated college. We're visiting outside as we're collecting mail. How's everybody doing? We just found out a couple months ago our next door neighbor, Dr. Ardis' next door neighbor, just found out the daughter did routine blood test. She has the BRCA1 or 2 gene. MD makes them aware this is not odd because your dad also has it. So now we know where she inherited it. The MD then says it's best that we cut off your breast now and do reconstructive surgery. By the time this conversation has happened, it's already happened. She's 22, it's already happened. She elected to do it. Now, you have to understand what's in my head as I'm walking into the house. My next thought is, why would this person or these parents do this? What in the world possibly could the MD said that would have made sense to the child and the parents to encourage this to happen when the dad's in his 70s, has the same gene, and has never developed breast cancer? No one has cancer here. If you believe genes equals cancer, you don't have a reality of science whatsoever. You're just listening to social media. You're just listening to TV. It is so flippin' ridiculous, the use and blame of genetics. It is a power move because you have no answer for it. Well, the answer's in The Biology of Belief. Go read it. Ask me how I really feel. Now, just so y'all know, I don't want to talk about this topic, but there is a real love affair this industry has with mutilating bodies. And the more money they can make off of it, the more power they get, the more trip they get off on mutilating bodies. And oh my God, okay. X-rays. Are X-rays a form of ionizing radiation that causes cancer? Are we sure about that? X-rays cause cancer? Yeah, okay. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. How many women do you know are doing mammograms every year? That is, let's squish every boob down to almost a cell layer thick and shoot X-rays through every cell in there. X-rays cause cancer, people. If we can convince people to do a screening test every year, we will increase our trillion-dollar industry by selling chemoradiation, surgeries, reconstruction, plastic surgeries. You've all been lied to. If you believe you can't feel your breast for any changes, for the love of God, stop doing stuff that causes cancer and you're increasing your risk every year upon another year of getting cancer. All right. However, if you're convinced that mammary cancer or breast cancer is something you personally believe you need to go get mammograms for, I need you to look at your spouse and tell them, I need you to do the same thing because the HPV virus supposedly causes penile cancer. So I need you to go stick your penis in the mammary machine and squeeze it every year and shoot x-rays through it. And I would like to see how often your husband wants to encourage you to make sure you go do that screening test every year and you go, great, I'll do it if you do it. That's all you got to say. You do it, I'll do it. All right, so 2022, nicotine and inflammatory diseases, anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory effects. This is so important, I just got to show this. All right, let's get through as much as we can. According to the data analysis from recent studies in the past 20 years, nicotine exerts much more anti-inflammatory, meaning it turns off pain, effects than pro-inflammatory ones, especially in ulcerative colitis, arthritis, sepsis, and endotoxemia. If you don't know what endotoxemia is, there's only one person here who has a clear definition of that, and that's Judy.
And you won't understand what I say.
That's right. All right, 2015, reduction of aggressive episodes after repeated transdermal nicotine administration in a hospitalized adolescent with autism spectrum disorder. They wanted to restrain a child to a bed with handcuffs in a hospital to calm them down. They were violent, didn't want to, they obviously don't, they have sensory issues. They don't want to be touched, grabbed, have pokes, needles inside of them. So this doctor's like, I don't want to restrain this kid. And I don't know, it must have came from God. This guy came to his head walking down the hallway trying to figure out how to restrain this kid without having to use restraints. You saw that movie by Andy Wakefield? Yeah. Oh my God, that poor kid. Alex, what's his last name? Oh my goodness. They didn't want to do that. This guy's like, well, what if we just give them a nicotine patch? Aggression remains a major cause of disease in patients with autism spectrum disorder. Current pharmacotherapy for aggression is not always effective, and it's often associated with morbidity, injury. Nicotine neurotransmission may play a prominent role in autism spectrum disorder disease, the process based on human and animal studies. And preclinical studies show nicotine administration can reduce aggression-related behaviors. Transdermal nicotine has been used to treat agitation and neuropsychiatric conditions with cholinergic dysfunction. Here we report the use of nicotine patches as a medication to treat aggression in a hospitalized adolescent with autism. Nicotine patch was recurrently well tolerated and reduced the need for emergency medication and restraint. These findings suggest further study of nicotine patches for aggression comorbid with autism is warranted. Well, here comes the next study. They said, we should study this more with autism. Yeah, they did. 2018, an exploratory trial of nicotine patches for aggression and irritability in adults with autism. What did they find? We explored the feasibility, tolerability, and preliminary efficacy of targeting nicotine receptors using nicotine patches to reduce aggressive symptoms in adults with autism. 8 subjects were randomized in a double-blind crossover trial with 7 milligram nicotine patches, which is the smallest ones they sell by dose, each for 1 week only. All participants tolerated nicotine treatment very well. They have this thing with autism, if you're a behavior analyst and you're working with autistic kids, they got this like scale, checklist irritability scale, change from baseline, which was improved by nicotine compared to placebo. Sleep ratings were also improved by nicotine and correlated with ABC1 improvement, or ABCI improvement. These findings support further investigation of nicotine agonists for aggression and sleep in autism disorder. When this study was done, they followed up with every single one of these autistic adults and wanted to know, did they stop using the nicotine patches after 6 days, 7 days? No, every single adult is still wearing them years later. And the caregivers and spouses of all these adults say they know when they have forgotten to put on that patch because their aggression and their antisocial behavior, inability to hold eye contact starts to subside. But as long as they keep a nicotine patch on them, and anybody out there who has an autistic individual, I just want you to know, as soon as I read these studies, I didn't even have to go to the methodology. I actually could see in my mind the only place this would work on the human body for an autistic person. These people hate clothes, they hate underwear, they hate anything touching them. I knew before I even looked at how they set up the study. In my head, I knew where they put it. Anybody want to guess where they put it? In between their shoulder blades. Can't reach that. Nicotine reduces the incidence of type 1 diabetes in mice. What? Wow, okay. You remember the whole economic consequences of the lie? How much insulin's being sold right now? How many Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Majorna, Byetta, Trulicity drugs are people injecting inside of them once a week for diabetes right now? And how many of you know that they are injecting Gila monster lizard venom into their body once a week to paralyze their stomach so they can't digest food? Ask your doctor if Gila monster venom's right for you. All right. Remember I said earlier they study mice because they say if it happens in a mouse, it will happen in a human.
XMRV.
Judy's screaming XMRV. Nicotine has been previously shown to have immunosuppressive actions. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Immunosuppressive means it shuts off the immune system or reduces its intensity. And a person in autoimmune disease, which diabetes is, their immune system's overactive. Nicotine turns that off. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease resulting from the specific destruction of the insulin-producing pancreas beta cells. Thus, we hypothesize that nicotine may exert protective effects against type 1 diabetes. Nicotine treatment reduced the hyperglycemia and incidence of disease in both the MLDS and NOD mouse models of diabetes. It lowered their blood sugar and reversed the disease in each of those animals that are engineered to be diabetic, type 1. Nicotine also protected against the diabetes-induced decrease in pancreatic insulin content observed in both animal models. Nicotine treatment reduces the incidence of type 1 diabetes in 2 animal models by changing the profile of pancreatic cytokine expression from Th1 to Th2. The only person that's going to be able to explain it to you is Judy. Did you know that nicotine can dissolve brain tumors in hours? Would you like to see it happen? This is an example of a brain tumor. Not really. Is anybody confused that that's a CGI Photoshop thing? This isn't a real scan of any kind. Okay, just want you to look. All right, now, Dr. Ardis is all over the place looking for research, and he loves it. I don't care where they publish this stuff. MDs who are treating humans are not going to be reading this medical journal. Look at the name of it, marine drugs. Marine means ocean, ocean animals, ocean creatures. This is the Marine Drug Medical Journal. Now, this is during the pandemic while all of you and I were locked down. They were paying scientists around the world to study these 2 venoms injected into mammals, just like all the COVID-19 patients. They took conotoxins, which are cone snail venoms from the ocean, which they found 15 of those cone snail venoms, a snail that's on the ocean floor. They found the venom of those creatures, 15 different ones in every positive COVID-19 patient's blood and feces. How many of you were scuba diving in 2020 and got bit by a cone snail and later were diagnosed with COVID? 15 different ones to be in fact, much less seen one. They took those venoms that were found in all COVID patients and they took the spike protein of COVID called cobratoxin, and they said it promotes while lipoxygenase and cyclooxygenase inhibit, suppress the proliferation of glioma 6 cells. Now we got to just summarize for this in English. They took 2 venoms, they injected into animals, and they saw there was growth, rapid growth of glial cells in the brain that led to, within hours of injecting these venoms, those mammals all produced a glioblastoma tumor in their brain. Within 72 hours, they could create a turbo cancer called glioblastoma with these venoms. Anybody heard the phrase turbo cancer? I can tell you how this works. Venoms do this. All right, so among the brain tumors, glioma is the most common. Anybody in here know anybody that's ever been diagnosed with a brain tumor? Anybody concerned about anybody with a glioblastoma? Oh my God, did the neurologist or oncologist recommend nicotine to your loved one? And if not, shame on them. They should be reading these ocean studies Dr. Ardis is reading. In general, different biomechanical mechanisms involving nicotine receptors and the arachidonic acid cascade are involved in oncogenesis. Judy, What is oncogenesis?
Causes cancer.
Right.
Genesis of cancer.
Genesis is creation of oncotumor. Okay. Glioma is the most common. What is a glioma? Glioma is the common type of tumor originating in the brain. About 33% of all brain tumors are gliomas. Oncogenesis, I like defining stuff for you, the formation and development of tumors. We clear on that? I hate people being confused. Look at this poor kid, 21 years old, Athens, Georgia, turbo cancer, brain cancer. She was diagnosed while she had a brain bleed on March 10th, 2023, while on vacation in Mexico, was diagnosed with a glioblastoma on her brainstem and died 4 weeks later, April 28, 2023. Can someone tell me what the average range of prognosis in life for a patient with a glioblastoma is? It could be months to years. This was just weeks. This is what you're seeing around the world. These are called turbo cancers, they reference them as. I just want you to remember this is happening real life. In this work, we studied the effects of nicotine receptor antagonists, those that actually shut off nicotine receptors. That's what venoms do, they shut them off. Marine snail, conotoxins, and snake alpha cobra toxin is what they're studying. That's a cone snail. All of you were bit by one who got COVID. You just didn't know it. King cobra, that's the other guy. That's the other venom. That causes rapid proliferation to grow by rapid production of new part cells, buds, or offspring. Rapid, turbo. It was found that alpha conotoxins and alpha cobra toxin promoted the proliferation of glioma cells. In English, we found these venoms accelerate the growth of glioblastoma tumors. While nicotine, this is the summary, Judy Mikovits. I cannot believe the crap they publish. This is the summary of the whole study, so that if an MD ever read this, MDs do not read studies, they read summaries. They read this part, and if they don't like anything it says, they just don't read it. So the summary reads, there's only one statement about nicotine in the summary that any MD would read. Dr. Ardis and Judy would go like this: what are you hiding? And we would go read the whole thing. It says here, we found alpha conotoxins, cobra toxins caused glioblastomas to start growing, while nicotine had practically no effect at concentrations below 1 microliter per milliliter. Now, I have to say, did I say microliter? Is that right? That designation? Okay. All right, so I just want to state here, in a study, if you're studying something, you always are studying two things. But they don't mention the other thing they're studying right here. They only mention one dose of nicotine, and it had no effect. And I remember thinking, well, why would they be studying nicotine and not compare two different doses? That's weird. It would be normal to study two different doses, okay? Not just one. But if an MD read this, they'd go like this: oh, nicotine, they tested nicotine and it had no benefit. And they would throw this study away. The moment I read this, I was like, wait, where's the comparison? They're doing a study comparing two things. Where's the comparison? All I thought is they said nicotine had no effect at a concentration below 1 microliter per milliliter. If you don't know how Dr. Ardis' brain works, it went just like this. I wonder what above did. What would you like to see? Now you get into the study. They say in many types of cancer, such as lung, breast, and stomach cancer, and in a number of others, nicotine receptors. Nicotine receptors. What do you think those receptors are for? The use of what? Nicotine. Stomach cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, and a number of others. Nicotine receptors are involved in the mechanisms of the cancer's progression. Nicotine's addictive, everybody. You better avoid it. We've got chemo and radiation for you. All right, so lung. I'm going to go through this real quick. Are lung conditions on the rise, lung cancers, that nicotine plays a role in their aggression? Here we go. Piedmont reports lung cancer on the rise. Why, it's not only a smoker's disease. Oh, crap. Lung disease is on the rise. Lung cancer is on the rise. Why? What about breast cancer? Oh, man, the Washington Post just published more young women are getting breast cancer. They want answers. That's 2023, by the way. Stomach cancer, they mentioned. Oh, Harvard mentions dramatic rise in cancer in people under 50. What are they talking about? Among the 14 cancer types on the rise that we studied, 8 were related to digestive system. Stomach cancers are on the rise, breast cancers are on the rise, brain cancers are on the rise, cancers are on the rise. Venoms cause Cancer. And they've known it since 1956. Gliomas, originating from various brain glial cells, are very malignant and poorly treatable tumors, and the study of the mechanisms of their growth and the search for new methods for treatment is urgently required. Nothing's working. This is 2021, by the way. There's 3 types of gliomas: astrocytomas. Now I'm just going to define this one. Anybody ever heard of this type of glioblastoma, maybe? Okay. Astrocytomas are glial cell tumors developed from connective tissue cells called astrocytes and are the most common primary intraaxial brain tumor, accounting for nearly half of all primary brain tumors. If your loved one was diagnosed with a brain cancer, it is very likely that one. 1 out of every 2. We tested the effects of nicotine, which is an agonist that turns on the nicotine receptors, with the exception of alpha-9 nicotine receptors. Forget about that. We tested the effects of nicotine against nicotine receptors in these cases at concentrations of 0.001 to 0.1 microliter per milliliter. That's the lower, remember the number, the thing on the summary? Lower concentration. Nicotine exerted no effect on the growth activity of glioma-cystic cells, and the loss of viability was 1 to 4%. All right, so they did test this concentration, and it really didn't have an effect. Okay, farther down the same paragraph, despite these changes with this low dose of nicotine, we investigated the effect of nicotine at a concentration of exactly 1 microliter. They didn't even go above. They went right at it. We want to know what happens with 1 microliter and the effect of the cells growing glioblastoma cells. At this nicotine concentration, inhibition of growth, stoppage of growth was observed, which after 72 hours, 3 days, led to a decrease in the number of cells by more than 2 times. It shrunk by half in 72 hours. Now let me ask you, if you were the scientist and you knew this happened, why wouldn't you put that in the summary? Are you all shocked to hear that or read that? Okay. Don't you think they were shocked?
What about gain of function from the vaccines from the snake venom?
Gain of function. Is just anything making anything worse. Thank you, government. All right, here we go. Yes, gain of function. All right. This is exactly out of the study. These 2 venoms they injected into animals, and within 24 hours, they saw this many astrocytes start collecting around the brain stem of all these mammals. At 48 hours, it was almost twice as much. Look how many of those cells are now there after 72 hours, 3 days. That's just pumping in the venom. Look what happened after 24 hours of just adding nicotine at the dose they didn't want to tell you in the summary. That's after 24 hours. You can count them, but it is less than the one on the left. Then they went to 48 hours. Is that less or more than the one on the left? Much less. 72 hours? That's all that was left. Now, the scientists report that at the end of 72 hours, they had to cancel their study with nicotine. In 72 hours. Now let me ask you, if you were the scientist and you knew this happened, why wouldn't you put that in the summary? Are you all shocked to hear that or read that? Okay. Don't you think they were shocked?
What about gain of function from the vaccines from the snake venom?
Gain of function. Is just anything making anything worse. Thank you, government. All right, here we go. Yes, gain of function. All right. This is exactly out of the study. These 2 venoms they injected into animals, and within 24 hours, they saw this many astrocytes start collecting around the brain stem of all these mammals. At 48 hours, it was almost twice as much. Look how many of those cells are now there after 72 hours, 3 days. That's just pumping in the venom. Look what happened after 24 hours of just adding nicotine at the dose they didn't want to tell you in the summary. That's after 24 hours. You can count them, but it is less than the one on the left. Then they went to 48 hours. Is that less or more than the one on the left? Much less. 72 hours? That's all that was left. Now, the scientists report that at the end of 72 hours, they had to cancel their study with nicotine. Okay, if you found out that a nutrient in plants was dissolving a brain tumor by half in 72 hours and you were the scientist, would you not be intrigued to go, man, how long will it take before the whole thing dissolves? Yeah, this is the deception in medical research. Judy knows all about it. At this nicotine concentration, inhibition was observed, shrunk by 2 times in 72 hours. But in the summary, this is back to the summary, look, the abstract, nicotine had practically no effect at concentrations below 1 microliter. And they make no other mention of nicotine anywhere in that summary. This is the study. Look, while we were in lockdown, the pharmaceutical industries and government grants around the world were paying scientists to find out what are the same venoms we're spreading around the world and calling COVID and injecting into people in the COVID-19 vaccines. What's going to happen to them? And what's a cure? Well, just so you know, the people that know they're doing this crap, they want to know and test what the cures are. And once they see they're working, they're going to stop the study. They want it for themselves. They don't want you knowing. All right, remember, cobra toxin. They were injecting to create glioblastomas. Remember the French study? They said it was cobra toxin up there at the top. Remember? This is what they're studying. Anyone heard anything about myocarditis? Did you know nicotine reverses myocarditis in less than 14 days and cures all scarring of the heart? All of it in 14 days or less. Did you know that? They took animals, 2015, and injected a virus called Coxsackie virus that would create viral myocarditis. Please, for the love of God, tell me you heard viral myocarditis is the type of myocarditis they're talking about the last 3 years? Okay. And look at this, dose dependent. That means the more nicotine you give them, the faster and better the protection is. They induced myocarditis and reversed it in 14 days using nicotine. The aim of this study was to investigate the dose-related effects of nicotine. An alpha-7 nicotine agonist turns on nicotine receptors in a murine model, mouse model, of viral myocarditis. If it happens in a mouse, it will happen in a human, damn it. Nicotine was administered at these doses. If you'd like to know, take a picture. If you have myocarditis, you're going to take the 2nd and the 3rd dose per your loved one's body weight 3 times a day for 7 to 14 days, and you'll reverse it all. Amen. The 0.1 dose didn't do anything. The 0.2 to 0.4 milligrams for every 2.2 pounds of body weight, called a kilogram, is how you figure it out. So real quickly, to give you the math, if you take your weight in pounds and divide it by 2.2 pounds, weight divided by 2.2, multiply that times the beginning point is 0.2 milligrams. Up to that same number times 0.4 milligrams. Can you say the formula again? Take your weight in pounds, divided by 2.2 pounds, which is a kilogram, and you multiply that times either one of those last 2 numbers, 0.2 or 0.4. The 0.2 number is the lowest dose that works to reverse myocarditis. The 0.4 dose is the highest dose they would do it with. The effects of nicotine on survival. Myocardial disease changes. Cardiac function and cytokine levels were studied. The survival rate on day 14 increased in a dose-dependent fashion and was markedly higher in those 2 doses I just mentioned, 0.2 and 0.4 milligram nicotine groups, than in the infected, untreated group. Treatment with high-dose nicotine reduced the myocardial inflammation and improved the impaired left ventricle function, which is the exact same one all you humans are dealing with when you have myocarditis and AFib. Nicotine. Ask your cardiologist if nicotine's right for you. The mRNA expressions and protein levels of tumor necrotic factor alpha, interleukin B, IL-6, IL-17A were significantly downregulated in dose-dependent manners in the nicotine treatment groups compared to the infected untreated groups. Your whole immune reaction is better with nicotine. Nicotine dose-dependently reduced the severity of viral myocarditis through inhibiting the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Here's a picture. The purple areas that they're pointing arrows to is the myocarditis damage. And then they're giving you, the star over here represents how many less of these big lump of purple areas there are remaining in the same heart sample tissue after nicotine administration. You'll see there's multiple areas, multiple arrows. You get to nicotine administration, there's only 1 arrow. You follow me? There's all your dosing over there. Now it works. I already said it. Now this is killer because I had no idea. Anybody ever had a dog or a bat in your house and told you needed a rabies vaccine all of a sudden? Interactions between rabies virus and the nicotine receptors. Did you know that rabies has a glycoprotein, which is the word for spike proteins? Did you know that rabies virus has a spike protein that binds to nicotine receptors? And did you know that science knows that nicotine modulates or controls and reverses the disease aggression of rabies? And if you didn't, I'd like to know why your veterinarian, when you say your dog got bit maybe by a rabid dog, why don't they shave a patch of hair and put a nicotine patch on them? Why don't they offer nicotine agents to your animals or you? Why are they always offering a vaccine? Even for nicotine addiction, I showed you, it's always a vaccine. Look at this. They have mice they can create that have no alpha-7 nicotine receptors, which are the only receptors that we're targeting COVID-19 sufferers. If they create an animal, genetically engineering them to not have those alpha-7 nicotine receptors, and they put rabies in those animals, they don't get rabies. The rabies only binds to the alpha-7 nicotine receptors. This is why nicotine that goes into the animals with those receptors cures them, and why the animals they've engineered that don't have them can't get rabies.
And just change that spike protein to that top line, glycoprotein ectodomain.
Yep.
The outside of the cell, the spike protein.
Yep.
So they're just engineering your next variant and going to drive you to force you to take rabies, just like your flunomia.
And remember I showed you the French study and it had cobra toxin and bungaro toxin. Do you remember the three things I did not highlight in the middle? They said they were identical to small little snippets of the rabies virus. Nicotine's the cure for rabies, people. This is why smokers didn't get it. Glantamine and nicotine have a synergistic effect on inhibition of microglial activation induced by HIV's spike protein. Chronic brain inflammation is the common final pathway in the majority of neurodegenerative diseases, and central to this phenomenon they see in HIV patients called HAD, H-A-D. This inflammatory mechanism is a central component.
They renamed it to Lyme disease.
Exactly right.
HIV.
They renamed this to Lyme disease.
They took that piece of the protein and put it right back when we cured it in 1983. Just saying.
Nicotine. Isn't that funny? I love having Judy around. She knows crap I don't know. And she throws it out there all the time, and I'm like, wow.
I'm really old.
No. No, she's not. She's just awesome.
Don't let them get away with changing the name.
All right, I just want to read this last statement. Our findings suggest a novel therapeutic combination to treat or prevent the onset of this neurological aspect of HIV through this modulation of the microglial inflammatory mechanism using nicotine. Just so y'all know. System by pre-treatment with nicotine. You can read it there. And glantamine.
Long-term HIV?
Yes.
Ardis, what would the dosage be for somebody who's got HIV?
Exactly the same. It's always in all the studies at 0.2 to 0.4 milligrams for every body weight. When you're doing nicotine, just remember you have to start off slowly. For those of you wondering how to start off using nicotine products, I have at the Dr. Ardis show where I give that QR code. Underneath patient resources is an actual free download. It's called nicotine.pdf. It tells you how to use all those agents. How to start, if you have a disease process, what you start with. Remember, nicotine, when you take nicotine, it actually releases all things bound to your nicotine receptors. And I know this is going to sound weird. You've all been poisoned with venom. All of you. And they target these alpha-7 nicotine receptors. And you have 13 meters in your gut. And every cell in those 13 meters is lined with alpha-7 nicotine receptors. Glyphosate binds to those receptors just like venom does. So when you swallow nicotine in a gum format, all your intestines are going to release nicotine at once, and guess how your bowels are going to feel when poison is now sitting in your intestine? Anybody ever had food poisoning? Does the body say, close the anus and hold the poison in? Or does it say, you better open that damn thing and let the floodgates out? You're going to throw up, vomit, fever, chills, sweat it out. Your body is designed to kick out poisons. I don't want to hear another person tell me I took nicotine and I got sick. Thank God you now know you are poisoned. Now just reduce the damn dose and give you a little bit. Give yourself 1 milligram a day. Cut them patches into little bitty pieces. And please don't tell me the box and the manufacturer it says don't cut them. If you were selling those damn patches at these specific doses, would you want them cutting it up and using little bitty pieces every day? No, you would say something like this. You can't cut these, it won't work. You have to take the whole thing every time. Come on, man. Cut the damn things, they work. I'm wearing a 3 milligram patch right now. I will wear one the rest of my life, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'll try to skip ahead to get to this last part of my presentation. That's all new. I have done research over the last year trying to define, is there any benefit to me if I actually use nicotine, which I never did before all this, at all in my life forevermore? You're reading all these studies about doing stuff in 7 days and seeing miraculous results. That's great. But is there any real reason my body would benefit from nicotine? I've actually found that every single virus on Earth, I'll name them, influenza, coronaviruses, HIV, rabies, polio, except for XMRV, I haven't looked at that one. Every other virus on Earth, MMRs, you name them all of them, the medical and scientific community state, all of them target alpha-7 nicotine receptors. Well, if that's true, why would I not want nicotine going into my body in some small amount? If I'm not going to eat it, I might as well just wear it. I don't know about you, I hate eggplant. I don't like how it tastes. And I'm not going to swallow it to get my nicotine, I'm just going to wear the patch. And then I'm going to go eat the other veggies I like potatoes. They also have nicotine, but less than the eggplant. So what? Now, this is the why. You all need to know this right now. I just showed you a whole bunch of reasons why the medical profession and the government would not want you to know that nicotine works for a whole bunch of diseases, including tumors, diabetes, and autoimmune disease. June 2022, Biden administration moves to restrict nicotine levels in tobacco products. They are now, he said he's the first president in history that's going to reduce the allowed amount of nicotine ever. Not pyrazines, nicotine. The Biden administration signaled Tuesday that it will develop a proposed rule to establish a maximum nicotine level in cigarettes and other tobacco products that will essentially lower the amount of nicotine in products available in the U.S. It is a step that no other administration has taken before, and as one public health expert say, would be transformative if enacted. And you better believe it, y'all are going to be getting a whole lot more drugs and vaccines if they take it away. Addiction to nicotine and combusted products is the main driver of the sustained use of these products. I just showed you that's a lie. Remember, they have to lie. Nicotine is powerfully addictive, said Dr. Judy Mikovits' buddy, Dr. Robert Califf. He's the new guy. All right, King's speech in England. 2023, just a few months ago. Government drive to phase out smoking and tackle youth vaping attracts large response. What did they do? They announced a historic bill to ban sale of tobacco products to anyone born on or after January 1st, 2009, forevermore, creating a better and brighter future for our children. New Zealand passes world first tobacco law to ban smoking for the next generation. The date? Last 2022. New Zealand is believed to be the first country in the world to implement the annually rising smoking age, ensuring tobacco cannot be sold to anyone born on or after 1st of January 2009. They are getting rid of these products because they know it is the effing antidote to all of their future virus pandemics they are going to throw at you. In fact, every one of these countries has announced they will have every tobacco nicotine product that is commercially sold out of circulation, including the U.S., by the year 2030. You might want to wonder why. Government of Canada, 2023, news release. The Government of Canada is committed to reducing the number of people in Canada who smoke cigarettes and use other tobacco products to less than 5% of the population by 2035. Why Australia decided to quit its vaping habit in 2023, the BBC says. Earlier this month, the government in Australia decided enough's enough and introduced a new range of new restrictions. Despite vapes already being illegal for many, under new legislation, they will become available by prescription only. All right, it thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie. If the truth about nicotine's health benefits were to get out, consider how many industries would be affected and how that would affect the state negatively. Only then do you understand the magnitude of the repeated lie. Ready for some more truth bombs? These two people just won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for creating the mRNA vaccines they called COVID-19 shots. Their names are Katalin Kariko and Drew Weissman. This is a paper with Dr. Judy Vajkovich's buddy, Robert Silverman here, listed. But I want to give credit.
XMRVs are. He created the first spike protein and caused prostate cancer that is exploding theoretically. It's all the mice.
Yep.
The M means mouse leukemia virus, folks.
If it happens to a mouse, it'll happen to a human.
Syncytian snake venom.
Right. Drew Weissman, Katalin Kariko. What are they being paid to do? I'm going to show you this first. They're actually being paid, Katalin Kariko and Drew Weissman, in 2011, they received funding from the National Institute of Health to explore the use of nucleoside-modified mRNA for gene therapy. Anybody got a question of what they're talking about here? mRNA gene therapy? Have you heard that reference about the COVID-19 mRNA shots? Okay, good. That's what the NIH is paying them for in 2011. I want to bring your attention to this. In their paper, they say RNA containing this little symbol is called pseudouridine. It was cleaved or cut efficiently by RNase A, RNase H, RNase T1, RNase T2, nuclease P1, nothing y'all need to know, and these two things, snake venom phosphodiesterase. They use snake venom phosphodiesterase to damage the DNA to do their mRNA gene altering technology. Why? Venom damages DNA to kill its prey. Guess who you are? You are the prey. All right, so they put the words snake venom phosphodiesterase in there. Raise your hand if you read English. Anybody confused about what that first word right there is? S-N-A-K-E? Or this one right here? V-E-N-O-M? Forget the next one. Those two English words say snake venom twice in one paragraph in the development of mRNA gene therapy shots. What's really funny is I can't get any MDs to look at these words in English. It's weird. I mean, I can read the word snake venom, and I have a problem with that. All right. I wanted to know where in the world would these two, I won't use exploitives, these two individuals, Drew Weissman and Katalin, where would they get snake venom phosphodiesterase to do their mRNA vaccine development? Because I'm damn sure they're not at the University of Pennsylvania milking snakes. This is where they buy this crap. They buy it from Innovative Research or a company called Thermo Fisher Scientific, who acquired this company after my Watch the Water documentary came out, like a month later. And I showed this on the Mike Adams, Stu Peters show. All right, I said this is the venom inside the shots, snake venom phosphodiesterase. You can buy it for $133. The 33 is significant, by the way. In fact, after I said it was significant on Mike Adams' show, they changed it to $150. And I'm not joking. All right, I want to read to you on the product descriptor page what they tell the researchers. If you get this snake venom phosphodiesterase stuff that damages the RNA of your victim, you cannot mix that snake venom stuff with any of these four things. It will destroy the venom protein from being toxic or deadly to you. It is inhibited in reducing agents such as glutathione, cysteine, and ascorbic acids. What's ascorbic acid? Vitamin C. Oh my God, scurvy. And completely inhibited by something called EDTA. All right, so before I dove in to learn about anything about EDTA, I remember thinking, oh my God, anybody that's got these shots, they better be on glutathione, some cysteine product, and vitamin C at a bare minimum. It dissolves that crap and it's in their body. It's been injected inside them, you understand? There's our EDTA that we created with Dr. Ed Group stuff, and you're going to see at our Healing for the Ages virtual summit. Actually, that's this coming Saturday, September 12th, 13th, and 14th. We're doing our Healing for the Ages. We have done research studies to confirm at months at a time what exact toxic metals, heavy metals, and specific metals are coming out of the body by doing oral EDTA. This is how it works to prevent the venom stuff. And we have confirmation on every single metal. We're going to show everybody. Through your hair samples, urinalysis, blood samples, we're confirming it in all evidences. The medical profession tells you EDTA doesn't work unless you inject it. We made an oral version and it even works better and has a longer half-life than injecting it.
How much?
EDTA?
Yes.
How much is it? It's $5,000. Just kidding.
I'm 33.
No, the instructions are on the bottle. Go do it. You can read it. All right. So this is just a list of things that are the doses they find in studies that are the most potent for destroying that venom protein. And I just put it as a summary. But remember, it's in your stuff. Now, I have to point out something, everybody. Anybody you know and love here in California or abroad who's gotten the COVID-19 vaccines? The likelihood that they were injected with snake venom phosphodiesterase is very significant. I have to go back to this. If you read this last statement, which I actually was terrified to tell the world at first, the snake venom enzyme has an absolute requirement for magnesium. If you know anybody who's gotten the shots and are having heart palpitations, arrhythmias, they have to get off of magnesium. Okay. And you have to be off of it for 3 months while you detox out the venom proteins, and then you can go back on magnesium. It was a setup. They knew if you were taking magnesium, it would make the blood clotting effects of that venom more potent. Okay? All right, now, everybody. Yes. The venom protein of these snakes, it's actually derived from rattlesnakes, is activated to cause damage in the body by magnesium. So, if you have a loved one who had the vaccines and have heart pains, chest pains, AFib, arrhythmias, it doesn't matter. The moment you look at all their supplements and find out which ones have magnesium and delete it, within 48 hours we see all those symptoms resolve. And then you detox them with that crap I just showed you for 3 months, and then go back on magnesium and try it at smaller doses and see if it works to not create an effect.
What if you never got the vaccine?
Well, then that snake, if you never got the vaccine, that venom is not in you. It had to be injected inside of you. So, shedding, you're not shedding snake venom phosphodiesterase, but shedding is a real thing. If you didn't watch our Healing for the Ages conference, we showed you the whole thing. Just so y'all know, the NIH, I showed the whole world. The NIH publishes on their website right now, they never put a single virus particle in any of the COVID-19 shots. It actually says it on there. We didn't put any of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in there. And it says we only put DNA plasmids, these little genetic circular hula hoops that were embedded with the spike protein genes, the venom proteins, as instruction for your cells, bacteria, and yeast in your body to uptake and start manufacturing the venom they were coded for.
What about the testing? Is there anything in there?
Testing for? Oh, the PCR swabs. There actually could have been a link there. I'll just tell you right now, all Q-tips were actually created at a factory called, I think it's called Pilgrim, actually. Puritan? Okay, anyway, it's in New England. You might want to look that up. Donald Trump actually went up to New England. It's called Puritan, actually. And then they opened up a whole new warehouse, and it was a military operation to create all the Q-tips for the PCR test. I would like to ask you, aren't there plenty of Q-tip manufacturers? We don't need the military to make them things. Why would that become a military? Okay.
Tips don't have anything to do with PCR. Up your nose, it's called rape.
Those are called cotton rapes. Okay. Now, I was just shown a little note that says I had to be out in 8 minutes, about 8 minutes ago. She just showed it to me. So everybody get up and bum rush the door. Just kidding. All right. So I don't know what to do with that information. Do I have a minute left or
Well,
no?
You have a few minutes left, and we need to let everyone know where to find this information. We need to talk about your book and how we get pre-orders.
Love it. Love it. Great. All right. Stay there for just a second.
How many more things are left?
All right. I want you to, if you can, scan here to the next presentation.
The next presentation.
Yeah, there's one that has another cover slide just like that. Yep, keep going. Click that one. Okay. All right, this is going to be real quick. I got to do this one for y'all so you never freak out about this again. The bird flu, real quick. All right. Bird flu, I'll do this in a minute or two. Remember, this is available at my website. What to know about the latest bird flu outbreak in the United States. It's called the avian flu. It's called H5N1 is the one they're actually talking about. What are they saying? Well, I want you to know. The bird flu virus drawing attention today is H5N1, and it was first identified in 1959. This is important. Okay. I would really like to make fun of all of this. There have been only 2 cases in the U.S., and neither were fatal. Number 1, it don't kill you. Number 2, they tell you it's a fever, and then it'll go away. So what's the need to be scared into a vaccine of any kind? You don't need to worry. It's not deadly to humans. It's not a new strain of the virus, people. Let it go. But I got to show you this. How do people get it? A human catches the disease by inhaling the blood, feathers, or powdered feces of the poultry. How many of you are doing that every day? If you ain't inhaling bird poop or bird blood, I don't know why anybody would inhale a peacock feather, but if you tried, you might get the bird flu. If you're not doing that crap, you don't have to worry about it. This, I have to just share real quick. In 2008, they vaccinated 25 million chickens in Egypt for this exact same virus they're calling the bird flu, H5N1. 100% of the 25 million chickens died of the bird flu. In 2008, vaccinated for the bird flu. 5 years later, in 2013, these same scientists were like, what can we add to this vaccine that 100% failed so we can preserve the poultry these people need to eat in Egypt? And they took this plant seed, squeezed the seed, got out the oil, and put that in the vaccine and called it an adjuvant, an additive. It's called Nigella sativa oil, otherwise known as black cumin seed, and it had a 90% success at preserving all the lives of every animal they injected it with. It is not a vaccine, it's a nutrient. And it worked. The essential oil of Nigella sativa was found to contain a crystalline structure that had a protective action against the disease. And just so y'all know, this actual product, I describe all this, what it does. Oh, okay. Y'all need to go download this. Okay. This is actually Nigella sativa oil increasing macrophage activity. And in this video, the orange cells are HIV-infected cells, and this one macrophage eats 3 of them in like 5 seconds and totally destroys them. And the macrophage was not injected by a vaccine. God put it in you. In this study, I'm going to show this other one. This is a cancer cell. It's actually a cervical cancer cell. The big one and those 2 little mouse ears over there are called T killer cells or T lymphocytes. Those 2 little cells kill that cancer cell and it totally explodes in just a few seconds. And that was not injected by Pfizer. It came from God. And Nigella sativa oil increases the activity of all these natural cells. And I just want you to know, you don't have to be afraid. Nigella sativa oil will do it. I show it, but I need to show you. I need to show this. Take a picture. Black seed oil beats the bird flu. Green tea leaves beats the bird flu. Green tea, anybody? And virgin coconut oil totally cures you of the bird flu. And guess who gave you all 3 of those? Not Dr. Ardis, not Big Pharma. Brought to you by the one and only. Got it? All right, now I need to tell you, we just did release this. I did not know that this one product actually does this until I was doing research to let people know why I created this formula I've been using for 15 years. It just came out a few weeks ago. It's got Nigella sativa. The black seed oil is the first ingredient in here because it is known to kill all gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, Klebsiella, Enterobacter, Candida, and yeast. I've been using this for years to cure people of Candida issues, toenail fungus, yeast infections, you name it. That's why I just released this a couple weeks ago. That is the first ingredient, just so you know. You do not have to be scared of any of this crap. God already gave you the solutions, and there's some people in the background, in their closets, in their garages, doing research on your behalf, and you should know who they are and follow them. Judy's been one of those for years. I'm trying to be one of those little heroes for people. But God bless you all, and do know this. You cannot forget this. All y'all better scan that, because if you like what you're learning, this Saturday, all day, you sign up for our Healing for the Ages virtual conference coming up on Saturday. It's me, Dr. Ed Group, Janice Schmidt, and Dr. Henry Ely. We are going to be proving to you that almost every disease on earth can be created by EMF radiation and 5G radiation. Your cell phones, Wi-Fi, we're going to prove to you. Then we're going to show you how live blood analysis we're doing right now of vaccinated and unvaccinated is completely altered and changed by 5G radiation, your cell phone, Wi-Fi, and then we show you how to remove all those problems without a supplement by neutralizing the effects of those energies to protect you, your loved ones, your families. Healing for the Ages, that's a virtual conference coming up. It's $59. Good luck spending that at a restaurant here anywhere close in one meal. $59 to get all this information. You don't have to attend. It will be sent to you by replays. You'll get all the notes and the PowerPoints. We will be opening registration for our in-person 3-day event. Judy will be speaking there. September 12th, 13th, and 14th in Dallas, Texas. Come join us, or virtually. We'll have thousands online again. And there's a book coming out Lindy's helping me with. The Dr. Ardis Show is where you're going to find it. We'll be announcing that. Last thing, I love you. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for listening. I hope this provided any value whatsoever. And hopefully in the future we can provide value also at some other meeting. God bless you.